Good afternoon. We'll call to order this work session, July 1st, 2025. The time is now 3:10 p.m. Begin with new business item number 1, the discussion of proposed zoning ordinances, AR1, AR2, AR3, B1, B2, B3, LI, HI, and table of permitted uses.
Yes, I'll actually start off on that. The way we were thinking about breaking this down, and if you all want to go in a different order, just let us know, was to start with the ARs, then move into the Bs and the Is, and then, of course, afterwards discuss the buffer ordinance, which is just in a different chapter. So, with that, starting with the AR zoning, I wanted to start with discussing as to what our AR zoning exists today. You'll see a lot of setback numbers here, but really they haven't changed that much. We've kind of modified it a little bit with regards to front road requirements, because some folks have a narrower easement to enter their property. But these type of things has not changed. The ones that have changed are the minimum lot areas. So let's start with where we are today. Where we are today for the agricultural zoning, AR1 and AR2, the minimum lot size for AR1 is 5 acres, and then minimum lot size for AR2 is 1 acre. There are no requirements that we put on, for rezoning from AR1 to AR2. We simply, as a general rule, the AR, if you're in the agricultural character area of the county, which is generally north of 119, nearly all zoning up there is either AR1 or AR2. So the concern, which we did not include AR zoning in the moratorium, but there was an issue that was requested that we look to address, is traditionally when someone wanted to rezone an AR1 piece of property to AR2, it was because they wanted to carve off a smaller piece of the property for a child so that they can build a home or put a mobile home there, something to that effect. More recently, what we've seen are some cases, it's still predominantly that relative that you're carving off the piece of property for, but we've seen some cases where folks were subdividing AR1 property into smaller AR1 lots for development and sale. And so the concern was that we would get more and more of those, and that the agricultural character area of the county would start to see more smaller 1 acre lots versus the larger acreage lots that are out there. So the steering committee discussed this. Is the first thing that we've discussed. And the concept that they've come up with is, because the discussion was, do we eliminate AR2? Do we leave AR2 in there and then come up with or leave AR2 in there and then make the minimum lot size larger? Or do we come up with a separate classification in the AR classification? So the recommendation was the latter. And so what they came up with is basically, with the exception of maybe the road frontage requirement on AR1, it stays the same. It's minimum 5 acre lots. The one requirement I think we get rid of on there is that we had this requirement that if you wanted to put a second unit on your AR1 property, you could, but it had to be a family member. The recommendation we came up was just kind of eliminate that family member requirement, so that if they, wanted to rent it out to a friend or a third party, they could. But other than that, AR1 stays the same. And I'm going to actually skip to AR3, which is a new category, and then go back to AR2. So what they did with is the concept of AR3 was really to replace nearly the non-family subdivision requests for that normally went to AR2, and say that yes, you can subdivide a piece of property, but you no longer can do it at 1 acre. It would be 2.5 acres minimum lot size instead. A lot of the setback requirements and so on and so forth stay similar to AR1. Some of them are a little bit smaller just simply because of the size of the lot, but it's mostly meets the AR1 qualifications on the setback sides. And then it also, you're allowed to have the 2 units on there as well. So the thought was, do you simply get rid of AR2 and replace it with AR3? There's 2 problems with that. One of them is that we've got a ton of AR2 already zoned properties out there. And the other is that it might interfere, it might prevent what was traditionally not a problem with the board to approve, which was those family subdivisions. Someone's ability to split off a small piece of property less than 2.5 acres to a family member. And so what the recommendation came up is that you leave AR2 in there, but it is there for but you can only rezone into it for 2 reasons. The first being if it is a family subdivision. If you sign an affidavit stating that the family relationship, you could peel off a piece of AR1 property and rezone it to AR2, so long as it is less than 2.5 acres. If it's more than 2.5 acres, it needs to be AR3. And then the second was when the county came up with zoning originally, we slapped AR1 and AR2 zoning on most properties, and some of them do not conform. And so we have a lot of AR1 properties out there that are less than that are less than 5 acres. So the thought, there are some things that require the lot to come into conformance in order for them to be complete. One of them is if you wanted to do like when this happened at the last meeting, like a minor property line change with a neighbor. You can't do that if it's a non-conforming lot. You have to come in conformance first. And so if I've got a non-conforming AR2 property that is less than an acre, the only option that person has is an R1 zoning, or to not, do the change in the property line at all. And we generally try and keep our zoning out of the agricultural classification area. So we left it in there for those cases where somebody needs to, and there's more than one item with regards to where you have to come into conformance. But what we did was we left it in there to say that if you are less than 2.5 acres, and what you want to do requires you to come in conformance, you can rezone into AR2 just so you can be conforming. And so it was kind of locked down to those two main purposes. Other than that, similar to the R6 zoning that we have, it's still on our books, but we do not, the board does not permit to rezone into that into that zoning classification anymore. And so that was the recommendation of the board of the steering committee to try and, preserve preserve the kind of rural character without that might have deteriorated by a lot of requests to rezone property for subdivision into 1 acre lots, is to just make that threshold 2.5 times higher to 2.5 acres in order to accomplish that. And again, if it's your decision to eliminate AR2 or put it into what we call a zombie district, which is what R6 is, where we just don't allow anyone to rezone to it anymore, we can do that. The board was just simply trying to, the steering committee was just simply trying to come up with a solution that would, respect the protection of the rural character, but also respect property rights, and what was traditionally been a request from families. So that's the AR2. That's the ARs. I understand there's probably going to be a lot of discussion with regards to AR, so I'm going to stop there before we go into any Bs, but just kind of give you the background and give the folks in the audience what we were attempting to do and get your feedback.
Okay. I have 3 questions from the jump. The affidavit length, I know we kind of got a so-so answer on that as far as for AR2.
The affidavit what?
The length of time.
Well, I'm going to tell you the trick is on, so the trick is enforcement on that. And so we thought about that. So the affidavit, our original concept was that you are swearing to what is current, right? Which is that I'm a family member, right? And the discussion was, can we put in the affidavit, that I will also agree not to, sell the properties at what you're getting at?
Yeah, or do we just write into the ordinance, and because we know when we approve something for rezoning.
Mm-hmm.
So if the same property comes before us again for a rezoning, can we put a time length in that it can, if you agree to this, that week,
Okay, because so I
month.
think the confusion we had is about the ability to flip it, right, immediately after, and that's almost impossible to track, right, because you've already subdivided the property, it's got 2 owners, and then one of them tries to sell it, 4 months later, it's, we can't combine it with the other property anymore because it's a different owner. But what you're saying is that if they come in, if an AR1 tries to rezones to what, AR2 and signs the affidavit?
Yeah, to AR2, they do the affidavit still.
Yeah.
Just for, honesty reasons.
Oh, they
alone,
can't subdivide as a family again?
until X amount of time goes by. So if they'd agree to these, one of the conditions to doing this beyond the affidavit is that we know when we approve, we have a database of when we approve a zoning, even though the address we may add an address or something, the primary address will still remain the same. Could we not keep track of that and just say 2 years before you could come back before us for?
I think we can, because every time someone comes before us for a rezoning, it goes under rezoning review, and review goes back and sees the history of the property.
Right.
And so we'd be able to see if there was a condition on that property when it was rezoned. So yes, we could do that.
And I was just curious if that was a condition that we could put in you know, the original writing of it, so it's up front.
So the question I have is, someone rezones a property from AR1 to AR2, and let's say it's would have to be less than 2.5 acres, so it would be like 2.3 acres or something like that. And so what you're saying, if they tried to come back in within this period of time and rezone again with a family restriction, you know, to another sibling or child, that would be restricted for that time period that we
To
put in
another
there.
sibling or child. Yeah.
What?
To another sibling or child, yeah, I'll just.
Yeah, what the
Right.
the definition that we have for immediate family is. So, if they try to do that again, they would be restricted for that period of time.
Right.
But then the further restriction they would have is that they can't go below an acre, right? So they can maybe try and go from 2.3 to, you know, 2 and 1 and 1.3 or something. But they'd be somewhat limited in their ability there.
Gotcha. I guess that's, that was that, and then I guess it would kind of cover with AR3 too, because you have 2.5 acres that could potentially be subdivided into 2 different lots, right?
If it's an AR3 property,
Yeah, so 2.5.
that's 2.5 acres.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they could technically, if it met the requirements of the family subdivision,
Right.
be subdivided into AR2.
Right, so, and the family thing is nothing but an honesty agreement, where you know, we don't have a way to enforce it, it's.
Well, you can if it's an affidavit, right? I mean, you can't lie in an
I'm
affidavit.
talking about, we don't have a way to keep track of it, you know, to say, show me your birth certificate, I'll make sure you're a family member type thing.
That's right. Other than them signing the piece of paper, we can't.
I got a simple question. I don't mean to interrupt, but how can we, life happens, people die, get married, get divorced every day.
I was getting there.
Why in the world are we sitting here tying it to somebody's family? If I got 5 acres and I want to split an acre out to sell it, to give it to my kid, whatever, what's that got to do with, I mean, why, I don't understand why we're even discussing that. It's my
Well,
property. Other than there's some that want to control, but I don't get it.
Well, I'll say the genesis of it was to simply say the concern was minimum lot sizes in AR shouldn't go down to 1 acre,
It was part of our.
right?
Hey, the 2.5 is fine, I understand, but I don't really think I don't really see how we can hold anybody. You give your acre, 2.5 acres to whoever in your family, and they get divorced or they pass away
Yeah.
in a quick amount of time, and then they're restricted to take care of their personal business because of whatever this rule we're trying to implement.
Well, but then
Garbage to me.
and what I was thinking, it may be cleaner just to simply say AR1 and AR3 and eliminate AR2, and just simply say and the reason I would recommend that than raising the minimum lot size for AR2 is it would immediately create a whole bunch of non-conforming lots, right? So it's just kind of easier to create a separate district with a minimum lot size of 2.5 and basically say no one under any circumstances gets rezoned into AR2 anymore. That if you want to peel off a piece of property from an AR1 large lot, your only option is to do something 2.5 acres or larger in AR3.
But that goes back, why?
That's going to be tougher in a district like the 5th district.
Yes.
You know, that's the problem, because you're not going to have the larger tract, you know, but it's going to be, you know, families with
Well, I just think
5, 10,
about our,
15 acres.
It's probably a
you
lot
know,
more acres than
however-
that.
about the future land use map that we, you know, vote on and agree to annually as preserved conservation areas and things like that. So that's why I'm looking at this in that way. where your density should be, is typically smaller, as we have on our future land use map, in our agricultural areas. So I understand where you're coming from.
Nobody's out
It's,
there.
and ultimately, I mean, we've got to
as
improve.
we old people die.
Right. Well, I was getting down to, my last thing was extenuating circumstances. So if there was a divorce, if there was a death, if there was something like that, obviously, it would be able to.
How about a medical condition?
Or,
I lose my job. I mean, you could put a multitude of things.
I think that medical conditions happen,
That's right.
but, I mean, what does that do?
I need to sell my land. I gotta pay medical bills.
Right.
I need to bring in somebody to take
I
care of
don't
me.
think a bank would lend money for a home to be built on the property with that on it. You know, I think that's I don't.
With a what?
Under, if property is under that affidavit,
Oh, right,
I
right,
think
right,
they'd have
yeah.
a difficult time. For say a child, you gave them the land to build a house, they may have a hard time getting a loan.
I
with
just
that
simply
on
have a
there.
problem, us trying to control a citizen's property. Period. I just do. It's not, it isn't our property. It's their property. I want to sell an acre of land to pay my bills, to put my kid through college. My son or daughter got married, wants to live next to me. That's my business. That's what I want to do with my land. You don't like it, I'm sorry, but it's mine.
Well, then why even have zoning ordinances in that case? Just
Well,
don't even have zoning
you make them up,
ordinances.
but I mean, 2.5
No,
acres
no,
is very
There's
reasonable.
no need to have zoning ordinances then,
Well,
because
no, I
what
wouldn't
you're
put
essentially.
4 houses on a 5-acre lot.
Yeah, but I think you know, there's this old saying about keep it simple, stupid. you
Yes,
know?
I agree with that
And
100%.
I think we've gotten off, what is the purpose of this 5 acres? Now, see, I wasn't involved when it all started, but to me, the purpose of the AR 5 acres was because that was gonna be an area that was gonna be somewhat protected from large-scale development. And by large scale, I'm gonna even go as to a 1/2 acre lot, which anymore, that's not even, that's, you know, nowadays. But the idea was, okay, we're rural, we're gonna try to keep certain segments, future land use map, into this agricultural, which is what A stands for, type of thing. So what's happening here that I see when you're trying to create a new one, okay, is you're automatically giving in because you're saying you can split it in half. Well, once you split it in half, then sooner down the line, you're gonna split it in half again, for all the reasons you mentioned, Forrest. I'm not gonna say anything against that. All those things happen. But here's my deal. I chose, in my lifetime, not to live in downtown Savannah, because I didn't want to live in downtown. It's beautiful, but I chose not to live there, okay? So if I'm coming to Effingham to live, and I admittedly, that all ties into your ability to do it, but let's say I'm looking for a place to live, and I go, well, you know, I like sort of the rural thing, so I'm gonna go to this area because it's 5-acre mini farms, and I know in this area, that or bigger is where I'm gonna be. And I don't have to worry, I know a lot of people love to live in subdivisions, okay? They're happy with that. Downtown Savannah people, apartment people. But I'm making this choice. This is where I want to live. And I've been sort of assured, because of the county zoning and rules, that's how it's going to be. Now, all of a sudden, because land so much is worth more and more people want to come in, and for the reasons you mentioned, it's my land, I can sell it, I can do what I want to. But now, all of a sudden, the guy next door to me decides, I want to put 5 houses here.
Who owns it?
Okay, but you're missing my point. You're missing my point entirely. My point is, I moved in this area because Effingham County said this was going to be a 5-acre mini farm area or bigger, and that's why I chose to live here. That's why, and so now you're telling me all of a sudden the reasons that Effingham County said I could live here are not valid anymore because we're going to automatically open it up to more to more acreage.
I guess if it's
And
a
so
neighborhood
that's what I'm trying to look at.
Right.
Why did we establish that zoning? And y'all established that. That was done before I got here.
Well, I had bought into a neighborhood where everybody had a 5-acre lot, and those stayed. That was the premise of that development. I'm just saying, if I have 5 or 10 acres, things change. I mean, I agree 100%. We've seen it from where I was growing up to all the way up here in Effingham. Everybody I went to school with lives in Effingham. Their kids are now living in Effingham. So there is that demand, but things are going to change. Now, if there's an area designated for 5-acre lots, I agree. If it's within a neighborhood or whatever, but
I think what we get into, and I'm kind of in between y'all two, character of the area. And we've denied stuff in the past because of the character in the area. If you've got a mini farm and like Colebrook, and they're all 5-acre lots, and somebody comes in and tries to divide that, well, that's still going to be against the character of that area.
I agree.
Ample time,
100%.
ample way to do that. But I don't, well, like Forrest, why are we talking about families and doing this? I don't care if it's their families or not. What I'm concerned about is protecting those neighbors in some way.
Right,
And
and-
that's,
The problem with that,
That's
you
the main
buy a
thing.
piece of property. When I hear people say it's not in my backyard, it ain't your backyard. That's my yard.
true.
You
Me
do
too.
what you want to do in your
But
yard.
going back to the character part of it, that's where that would come in,
You-
set proper setbacks.
I agree. You
and-
just, there's
and
some
then if
things you
buy
can't.
that, and you know what the setbacks are and all that, and you do what you're supposed to do in that area.
Forever? I mean, at what
Well, I mean,
point?
things may change.
Well, I mean, we
Used to where
adopt.
I'm at used to be AR. I mean, now it's,
At what point do you not need the
Fence.
rezoning process?
I was gonna
guess?
say-
I see what you're saying,
Yes.
but
All right.
in theory, you know, you look at either in theory, your premise in theory would be there would be no reason to ever rezone. So the real, you know what I'm saying?
How important is it then? You're right.
Yeah.
We don't all know what's going
That's
to be
right,
10 years
yeah,
from now.
yeah.
But why do we have to do it now? Is it that much of a need now?
Mm-hmm.
Is what I'm asking. I'd like to know if you don't, what some of these people think.
Well, I mean, I don't know. What brought us to this point, other than you said there were people looking to maybe,
There was feedback from the board meetings, and Commissioner Deloach also brought it up, that in District 3, there's simply being, there is a lot more requests to do these AR2 subdivisions. And one thing I forgot to mention to you, which almost never happens, but it could happen if it's large enough, right, is AR2 is not limited to 1 acre. If you have water or sewer there, you can go down to a half an acre.
Yes.
And at some point, you know, there was a concern, is that small of a lot, let's say on a shared well or shared septic, or is that appropriate for the agricultural character area of the county, which is mostly District 3? Which,
I think it's fair to revisit that.
right. And so, you know, so the question is, you know, I mean, there could be multiple ways that you address it. This was just one of them. And it, you know, because to the point is, AR2's always been around, right? As long as AR1's been around, from my understanding. And so there's always been an ability to subdivide a large property in the agricultural area to smaller properties. And so one way you can handle that is simply say, we'll just leave it as it is, and we'll take it by a case-by-case basis, and bring it up to the board. And that's completely fine. We were just simply, the steering committee was simply kind of addressing a request that was kind of put on us to take a look at. And this was, you know, the, you know, just one potential solution to it.
Yeah.
Again, another potential solution is do nothing, right? And just simply look at all these AR2 requests on a case-by-case basis. A third might be just, let's just get, if we do that, let's just change AR2 so it's minimum 1 acre no matter what. You can do a minor tweak to that. Or a third is you can change the minimum lot size above 1 acre. But, you know, these are just options that are available to you. And again, the option is always available to do nothing and take it case by case.
And
well, the AR3 in the northern end, the 2.5 acre lots, that's a state lot this day and time. I mean, you don't see that very often. I would think that to be a positive. But
Well, that was the attempt, right, is to try and make
I don't have a problem with
but
that.
I mean,
make the rezonings larger, make those requests
with your theory,
larger.
Forrest, I mean, they should be able to do what the heck they want to. So why do we even, I mean, if we're just doing this for checking the box for our regional commission of future land use planning, it means nothing. It's worthless.
Well, no, I mean, if you
Proposed
want
standards
to,
are
again,
stronger than-
I would rather have a bunch of 2.5 acre lots versus a bunch of 1 acre lots.
So
If that's the goal, to make
finishing
bigger
the
lots
questions
in
that
certain
I had
areas.
originally was to AR3. If preservation is part of the key, why 2 primaries per 2.5 acres?
Yeah, so, I mean, we already had that on AR, we already had that in AR1, right? And one of the things that, I don't remember if it was before January that we started discussing the accessory dwelling units and providing folks a little bit more flexibility on that.
That was the so ADUs are habitable as well? I mean, can they be habitable?
Well, accessory dwelling units, yeah, so it would have to be habitable.
Right. So
Yeah.
we were looking at a carriage house situation for, just say you have new teachers moving into county, you have something you can rent out to them that's affordable.
That's right.
But do you really, if you got 2.5 acres and just say you evenly divide it and put 2 dwellings, you're down to 1.25 acres per AR3 at that point.
Correct. If you are going to,
be-
like personally, non-legally kind of, separate the property into
There-
2
the
dwelling
potential's there,
areas. I mean, then yes, it would be you would do it at 1.25 each if you were gonna do it evenly.
And then extenuating circumstances, which is some things that Forrest brought up. And then I just wrote down, why do we even have AR2, period? Why not just,
Well, that's the other option, that you could just kind of eliminate it and never see it again. I mean, and nothing ever gets rezoned to it again. And so for the people who traditionally wanted to rezone to AR2 would be forced to rezone to AR1, assuming that they had enough property to do it. And I mean, so it would be rezoning to AR3, assuming they had enough property to do it, because it would be 2.5 acres rather than 1. So, I mean, it's,
I wouldn't
I
support
hope that we put, this map that we have here is for public to look at and kind of get an idea of where we're going with things. Is that correct, how it's supposed to be?
you're talking about
land
the
use?
future land use map? Yes.
Right. So it's supposed to be well thought out, I would assume, as to where things are going to go. So if we decide to just say, we do what we want,
I'm not saying that.
then why don't we just agricultural, residential, the rest of the thing, and leave it, take the dark green out completely? Because I believe the dark green area and some of the light green areas mainly the focus for all these ARs. And I agree with you. I'm a capitalist all day long.
It's nothing about that. It's the control that we're trying to put, a burden we're putting on a citizen, in my opinion.
I think we burden them now by having to come before us for zoning, if you think about it.
That part of it,
There's gotta be certain restrictions, but again, if I wanna cut out an acre, for whatever reason, it's my business.
Well,
I gotta
and-
come stand before this group. Some think, yes, sir, it's your property, some think, no.
Well, but the thing is, we already have that in place. I think you're muddying the waters with AR3. I just think it's opening the door to saying it's okay to start subdividing this area. I think we've come here. I don't think we're burdened that much. I mean, I've only been here 6 months. There haven't been that many times that people have come up here in that 6 month period and asked to subdivide the 5 acres. Now, it might be getting more and more and more, as time goes by, and you may say we're getting too burdened too much, but you're still gonna hear it when they want to divide it in half. So there's a chance. You can look at the case-by-case basis when they come up and give the people the right. We can argue back and forth.
I don't
whatever.
have a strong
we can
opinion
leave
on
it-
AR3, so,
I'm just saying,
I
I
really
just think
don't
you're
have
adding-
a strong opinion there.
I
We could just
think
go
you're
like we
adding
are.
something else. So leave it
I-
alone
I-
for the moment.
Yeah, and I just pictured it as another tool to possibly not have 1 acre. That's how I saw it. Right or wrong, that's how I've looked at it.
So it is an
Well, my understanding is now, from what I'm trying to learn, because there's way more people out here, and I do want to hear from them about it. But you can't really, you can't have water and sewer on less than an acre.
Correct.
If you start putting easements into those properties, you can't count easements. So automatically, if you take an acre and you put that easement in there, you've lost the acre. you can't put water and sewer. Well, then you can't build on it.
I think it's
Is
deeded
that correct?
acreage.
Y'all people
I think
that know
it's
this
deeded
for a living?
acreage, I think, I
Is
don't
it?
know.
It is deeded acreage, yeah.
Deeded acreage. is
So,
what it
so,
goes on.
so easements don't count or do count?
The easements.
Right away does, because that's actually not deeded acreage. My
Yeah.
understanding.
Well, okay, if you have right of
You got
way,
water and
then
sewer,
it's
you can go
gonna
down to half
eliminate,
an acre.
it's gonna eliminate how low you can go.
Right, right, right.
Smaller
So
than
if it's if an easement, obviously this property stays with whoever is title of the property, not the easement owner, right? And so that could go towards that minimum acreage requirement. But right, once you deed a right of way, it's gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah.
So it might what's the term I'm looking for? It's not modify, self-monitor itself because it'll eliminate that.
Yeah.
But anyway, can we hear?
Yeah, I was about to invite anybody from the public who want to discuss.
Well, and I'll say, we
ARs.
do have one member, I think it's just one of the steering committee here, which is Ryan.
We have Lindsay here too.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you in the front. Sorry about that.
Yeah, the goal is to keep them large, I get that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon, Ryan Thompson. There are a lot of the things that we've discussed during the committee. There's a reason why it took us 2 of our committee meetings to get past this issue that wasn't the moratorium-related thing, because it was unique and it was a challenge to work through. I think the reason I was excited to hear AR3 come as an option, because as a non-committee member, but as a planning board member, there's been many times that people came in front of us asking to subdivide a 5-acre piece or maybe a 10-acre piece, but wanted to create, well, let me back up, maybe it was a 7-acre piece, right? They needed to rezone, you had to rezone the entirety of it to AR2 to create 2 3.5-acre lots, right? All of that got rezoned to AR2. Now there's the potential for 6 lots. With the AR3, I've always looked at it as just another tool in the toolbox we can choose to use or not, but that would give us a way to limit that without having to put a condition that you can't further subdivide the AR2 rezoning.
That's what I was getting at with the AR3.
The aspect of the long-term condition of ownership and is it family or not, I've voted for a recommendation against rezoning to AR2 when it was family-based, because I don't see that, like, if I have something, the benefit of having children and my neighbor doesn't, that to me doesn't give me more rights to ask for that. And I guess it's just that's been my stance on that piece all along. Related to the sizes, I was actually surprised. I did not realize in the AR2 that with water, that you could go down to 1/2 acre.
Yes, I think that needs to be removed.
We didn't discuss that deeply as a committee, but if there is no AR3, I think we were all surprised that you could do that with AR2. And it's
I
probably
don't know
something
that
that would be
that's been-
worthwhile.
It's
to be-
never happened.
Never really, but it would probably need to address that.
Yeah.
And it can be easily
I had it wrote down as
solved
if we could remove
and
it.
create some
No, I
opportunities
agree. I
elsewhere,
agree.
so.
Yeah.
It's never
So
been an
I-
issue.
And then the non-conforming, we have those come forward, just like you guys know, we have them come forward all the time. I am surprised sometimes at what we had to go through to make a solution solvable. I agree with the future land use map aspect of things, that we need to look to that as the guidance, and to me, it comes down to is AR, what is the AR part of the ag residential portion of the zoning, and what do we consider the acreage to be appropriate to be the ag part that still checks that checkbox? And is there a part in the county that it's not appropriate for one of them to be? So that's
Good question.
all I had.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else?
Hi. I'm Lindsay
State your name
Smith.
for the record, please.
So I do want to say a couple of things. So I was on the steering committee. I am also Planning and Zoning District 5. So I want to talk kind of about what Forrest said. I also am a local real estate agent. I obviously having clients who like to sell their land and not necessarily be tied into a box of only being able to sell to their family members. I feel pretty strongly that that would, if that were restricted on the properties, and even myself being a mother, I only have one child. In the future, if, Lord forbid, something were to happen to my child or when he grows up, he doesn't have children. If I were to ever have something and it were restricted to just a family member and he doesn't have children, what am I supposed to do with this land? So just like Forrest said, you're cutting off people's property rights, and I don't agree with that. So maybe if it doesn't fit the area, no, it shouldn't be used, but as long as they're using the land within the legal limits of the law, I don't think someone's rights as an American to use their land how they see it to be used should be restricted. The other thing is if you do that and restrict it to just family, how does that affect the value of their land when they go to sell it to a family member? Because if they only have one family member who is their heir or whatever to sell it to, that family member is the only person legally that can buy it. And although the value of the land could be $200,000, that family member per the county is the only person that is the right to buy it. But that family member can say, I'm only paying you $20,000. That's all I've got. And the county just created a really big problem.
I could just kind of correct that the restriction to the family member was only on the subdivision and rezoning of the property. They could sell it to whoever they want. It's essentially free and clear. The discussion came up about the affidavit of the ability to re-subdivide the property
After.
again, and putting a restriction on that.
How soon could they come back before us?
Before.
Yeah,
Correct.
but there's no restrictions on the sale of the
Okay,
property.
so that was, I totally
Yeah,
was,
and typically, what I've seen anyway, Lindsay, has never been a sale. It's been I want to gift it to whomever, quitclaim deed.
okay.
And then once it's gifted, they can sell it. I
Okay.
mean, that's,
The question was, how do you circumvent that, nefarious person that wants to do this to, for the first step, to further subdivide it, in an area that would be atypical for it? Or do we just remove it entirely and it just goes away?
Like
Okay.
Ryan said, didn't AR3 handle that part of it?
Yeah, that's why.
Well, there's no restrictions on AR3, other than the
AR2.
2.5 acres.
2.5
But
acres.
from
But it kept-
AR2, but AR2, putting that restriction on it would potentially.
If you had an AR1 piece of property and you wanted to rezone it to, if this was all passed, let's say, and you wanted to rezone it to AR2 because it was less than 2.5 acres, then at that case, you couldn't rezone it to AR3 because it's not 2.5 acres. So in that case, the only option for rezoning would be AR2, and then your only ability to do that is for a subdividing a piece of property for a family member. And that's if we leave AR2 in existence or put that restriction on there. And so this was trying to split the baby
Right.
and figure out how we can protect the traditional uses of the AR1 to AR2 rezoning, which, as I mentioned, I would venture to say somewhere at least in the 80% range is a family subdivision, right? I'm peeling off a piece of property, and it all comes in front of the board all the time, right? I want to sell it to my son's moving here, I'm getting older, I want to peel off a piece of property for him to move in, right? So we wanted to, the thought was we try and protect that ability without opening the door for someone to come in there and then just subdivide for profit and then start slicing and dicing the rural area of the county. If you ask me that, at this point, based on the feedback, it sounds too complicated.
And then-
And so we either, so the two choices, I think, here are either do nothing, except maybe make a little bit of a tweak with regards to the half-acre AR2, but do nothing, and then every time someone wants to go AR1 to AR2, the board will go on a case-by-case basis to determine if that's a route they want to go.
Correct.
Or or create, or eliminate AR2, do AR3, and just say you can no longer do 1 acre, you can only do, it's, AR3 would be just like AR2, except it's 2.5 acres.
And I was gonna say, I agree with Ryan's sentiment. I love the idea of the option of the AR3, but I don't think the AR2 subdividing specifically to an AR2 there should not play any role of whether it's a family member or not. It shouldn't matter.
I agree with that.
So, because like I said, in the future, I've come before y'all
If
from,
it fits the character or not of the area.
correct, I've come
I
before y'all in the past with an AR1 to AR2 subdivision, and it fit the character of the area.
Yeah, I was gonna get to my point ultimately that trying to over-legislate something just complicates things to
Bingo.
death. So do we just eliminate it? Do we just keep it as is? Do we just pull out the half-acre piece? You know, are we really restricting people to AR3 at that point? If we decide to push AR3 and eliminate AR2, that takes that 1 acre option out. It's only 2.5 at
Yeah.
that point, right?
Well, I thought that's what AR3 did.
Right.
It kept it from being 5 lots in 5 acre area.
Yeah, so it'd be
You
2
know,
lots.
So if
But
your
it would be
desire
2
was to
lots
truly
and
do that,
potentially
But
4
you can
houses.
put 2 dwellings
But it could be
on the
4
2.5
houses.
acres though. So I think,
but that has to be
Well, we
like
can
an
take that
accessory
away, maybe.
dwelling.
You can.
We
Yeah.
can take that away.
well, that's what I'm, you know, if you leave the 2 dwellings, you're not accomplishing anything to me. You know, of course, but anyway, we got other
You
people.
Well, I don't-
Let's-
But
let's
you
see what
prevent 5
insights-
lots from happening, and that's what I thought that was supposed to be
Wait,
for.
I didn't hear what you said.
I thought that the AR3 would prevent somebody from coming in and doing 5 lots.
Right. Just make it, make the smallest
But also,
subdividable
The
lot
fact, the
larger.
fact is zoning is controlling others under the guise of protecting them. And that's what we have to be careful.
I'm
You
not
know,
against
I
the
just-
AR2, if we go to that, if the idea is to just put 1 dwelling on each lot.
on AR3,
I mean AR3, I'm sorry, yeah.
right, one dwelling, one accessory dwelling.
If we go to AR3, then there can only be
As
1
an
dwelling
option.
per,
Then if
But-
your
2.5 acre
intent
lot.
is to do
He-
that with their family member,
So-
that's gonna keep that intent in place.
Keep in mind, we may want to look at, and the accessory dwelling requirements are slightly different, right? So we're a little bit more flexible on accessory dwelling definitions in AR than we are in R, right? So like in an R district, if you have a detached garage, we allow you to have a accessory dwelling unit above your garage, right? Type of thing.
like a
Or-
living area, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not just living area, but you can have a separate little,
Apartment or
mini
whatever.
apartment.
Oh, okay.
But you can't rent that out, right? Or,
You could.
okay.
Um,
Additional dwelling, you could.
Good with a garage, I didn't realize.
Nobody's
you
gonna
can do an
put,
Airbnb.
if they're gonna
above your
lose
garage.
homestead,
Yeah, that's right. And that's the other, I didn't want to
they
get
risk
into that
losing homestead,
complication.
nobody's
That's
gonna
gonna
put
open
us.
up
Yeah.
another.
Yeah, so
So,
there's
yeah,
a,
we can
My
there's
still
a
have
provision in
accessory-
state law that if you don't control any part of your property, you use your homestead exemption.
It's a lease,
So
yeah.
that really is going to put the kibosh on anybody doing that. Or if
Yeah,
they're doing
you
it,
could
they're
build
gonna
an
try and do
accessory
it,
dwelling
they're
like
gonna do
a
it
garage
quietly.
apartment.
Yeah.
The biggest hope I had with
Pool house
AR3
and
was
the-
to
Yeah.
prevent everybody from having to come before the board every time they want to do something with
Yeah.
their family member.
But
That was a
honestly,
mechanism, you could go straight forward, and if that's what you wanted to do, and that's truly what you wanted to do, you could do it without coming to the board.
but honestly,
That's-
that seems like the best controls to really.
And then if
hear
somebody
what's
wanted to do
there.
something else,
I mean,
then
I
they
could
have to
see
come
you
before the
would,
board.
you would potentially sway people away by having that here. You'd be like, oh, I can't do that here. I'm not even gonna try to hear it.
I mean,
But
if that's the intent in that area, you want to keep the character of that area, you want to keep lot size big, and you want to, and then I don't care if they sell it to their uncle's brother's mother's cousin.
yeah, all right.
And that doesn't matter to me then, you're still, you're doing what we're trying to do and protect the character of the area.
Go ahead.
I'll be
Sorry.
quick. My name is Travis Bazemore. I work with EMC Engineering, and we do a lot of work in the county. So, one question I had concerning the AR2 and 3 issue that y'all been talking about mostly is, does the county not already have in place a rule that you have to wait a certain amount of time? If you subdivide a property, you have to wait a certain amount of time before you can come back?
If it's a minor subdivision,
That's all changed.
yeah, I think we
changed?
changed that when we
I knew it was
changed the
like that
minor
at one
subdivision.
Was
time.
in there, yeah.
So-
That was the difference
Yeah.
between a minor subdivision and a major, right?
It was, yes, sir, and it was
Yeah.
recently taken out.
Yeah.
'Cause it was like a year or so, and
Yeah,
it was exactly what y'all were talking about.
I know,
but I guess
yeah.
if that's not the case anymore, then we'll just have to move on. And if y'all will allow it, I got like 2 or 3 quick things that it's not really concerning the AR3, but it's just stuff that I found that kind of over the years and maybe I'm behind the game, maybe the committee's done talked about some of this stuff, but I'll be very, very quick. The first thing is the minimum lot road frontage, for all three is 100 foot. We've come across in several different cases, with work and personally. So what happens when you have 100 foot of lot frontage? So you have a piece of property that's landlocked. The county only requires a 60-foot easement for you to obtain to get to that property. So I can get a 60-foot easement, go about my business, do whatever I want to with that property, zone it, whatever, if I can get approved. However, if that person gives me that property, I have to have 100 foot. So it really don't make no sense, and it's come up several times. And so I would think if you made the minimum lot frontage 60, it would be in line with the easement, because it don't really make sense for you to be able to do it with an easement. But then if you're given the property, now all of a sudden you have to get another 40 foot from these people, and they might not be willing to do that, where they'd be willing to do 60. Just throwing that out there, maybe the committee can talk about that. And that would be for all three. The other thing was, it's my understanding, and I've talked with several other people in our office, I mean, the health department has always required 150 foot minimum if you have a septic tank. And y'all have that for AR 1 and 3 at the building line. So you could have on a cul-de-sac or something, you could have 150 foot at the building, and then maybe it skinnies up to 100, but like on a rectangular lot, I noticed on the AR2, you're only calling out the minimum lot width at the building 100. So we have had the issue where you go and you do a rectangular lot, the county approves it, it meets the AR2, but then the health department says, well, you can't put a septic tank on this lot because it's got to be 150 foot. I don't know if they've ever actually enforced that, but I know that is what we've always been told, that the minimum is 150. So that might be something that y'all look at as something kind of minor. And then the only other thing I saw looking through this stuff, and I'm just gonna throw this out there because we do work in a lot of surrounding areas, and I know just even here tonight, you're talking AR1, but that's 5 acres. You're talking AR3, and that's 2.5 acres. I don't know how much of a work it would be, because probably a lot, but y'all might want to look at going towards, I know like in Bullitt County, they call their, and this is something just thinking about it simplistically, their 5 acre minimum lot is AR5. Their 2.5 minimum is AR 2.5. So every minimum, and you can expound from that. You can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever in the future, and it would help you because you got AR1 that's 5, you got AR2 that's 1,
AR 2.5.
and you got AR3 that's 2.5.
Why are you making sense?
These were started in, AR1 started in the 70s.
I understand that, but I'm just saying it's something that we've seen that, and then you can move on if you want. I mean, some of the commissioners might not want to limit, but like I said, you could have 2.75, 2.76, or whatever, and every time, because it's very confusing to people. I mean,
That don't do, I know, that just.
that aren't in it, because they're like, well, what do I have to rezone to? AR3, and that's
Yeah, your
2.5.
AR3 is bigger than AR2, and it just
So,
doesn't.
and then, but I know that might be overtaking, the tax assessors might take them 5 years to get everybody
Have a
converted.
whole lot of non-conforming lots,
Right.
wouldn't we, immediately?
But since y'all let me talk, I figured I'd throw it out there. So,
And if
think
I could mention the easement issue and the minimum lot width, yeah, that is one of the reasons. I think AR1 used to be 150, and we had one of the recommendations on the committee was to lower it to 100. And I don't, that may not be enough. If our minimum easement requirement's 60, and the reason we lowered it to 100 is for that exact reason, is because they're just, when properties get divided up, it's you've got these flag lots, and it's just it's difficult to set them up in any other way And if you allow them to have 60 feet, it gives them a couple more options. So,
And it is a flag lot, but it would be a flag lot even with 100.
that's right, yeah.
I mean, you're talking about 40 more foot. It just, I know it seems that it complicated things because this person was like, well, just give them an easement. I don't want to give them an easement. I want them to give them the property and let it be theirs. And so then it's like, well, you got to give them 100. And it just didn't make a whole lot of sense thinking about things simplistically. But I thought I'd throw it out there because it has something that we've just come across on us several times. And it just didn't make sense to be able to do an easement, but then you got to do 100. And I didn't never know where that really was, what it's based on. You know, the minimum at the building, we've always, when we're laying out stuff, we always kind of, you know, with a 50-foot setback on both sides, you know, 50 to 100-foot home, that's your 150. And then also the health department, I think that's kind of what they have figured out at one time, you know, a normal size house with these setbacks, septic drain field, this will fit. So I didn't know where that 100 at the frontage actually, if it was like based on something or if it was just come up with. So anyway, I figured I'd throw it out there.
Been there a while, I think.
Yeah, it has.
No, I don't recall changing it.
I thought everybody knew 1 meant 7 and 2 meant 8. How you doing, sir?
Hey, good afternoon. Dave Burns. I spent a couple years on the zoning board, and I agree with Travis. You know, we heard about R6 how many times? 6 houses to the acre. That was never the case, but because it was named R6, everybody that stood here always assumed, you know, it was more like 3 houses to the acre. So that was a good point about AR 2.5. Just a couple quick thoughts. I mean, I don't see how you get rid of AR2 because you already have so many already zoned that way. And to me, when they zoned it, they get to follow those rules at that time, grandfathered in or however you want to say it. So personally, I liked AR3 thought. I mean, I live in the North End, District 3. There's a lot of open land. There's a lot of road frontage. And we're starting to see a trend of people coming and buying these older, smaller lots and breaking them up. You know, these are on 55-mile-an-hour highways, and when you start stacking 1 acre lots up on the side of the road, you can tell exactly when somebody's having a function because all the cars are parked on the shoulder of the road. If it's a big enough function, they're parked on both sides of the highway. At night, I mean, it is a safety risk. And I agree with what y'all said. It's not fitting for the area. So I do think, unfortunately, there has to be some control. You know, AR1 and AR2 was put in way before any of our times. And so I think you know, that AR3 is now kind of bringing some of those older thoughts into, you know, the thought process of where we are today and what we're seeing. I mean, in the past, most of the time, everything was for families, right? Families breaking up their land, dividing it up. Now we're seeing more and more development, more and more, you know, investors coming and buying this land and coming in and taking advantage of these smaller lots in these areas. I do think the future land use map is absolutely what needs to be done. But don't forget, I mean, you still have R1. You know, you can still go down to 1 acre with R1. And if someone wants to do different, I mean, I don't like being told what I can do with my land, but unfortunately, we do have laws. I mean, they can always file for a variance request, right? And they can come,
Yeah.
they
got a
can
hardship,
stand
right.
before this committee and plead their case. So that's about all I got. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man.
My name's Jimmy Blicky. What are y'all laughing about?
I'm just smiling.
Boy, I think people ought to be able to do whatever they want to with their property.
Yes, sir.
But you probably got a nice place. What if I decide to put a dadgum junkyard on 5 acres beside you? You know, you ain't gonna like that.
Correct.
We gotta have zoning laws. That's the reason we got zoning laws, is to protect people's property. I got a situation in my neighborhood right now that's driving me nuts because he ain't abiding by the zoning laws for that neighborhood. And he's going headstrong, like just doing whatever he wants to. But you gotta have zoning laws. What is AR2? 2.5 acres?
No, sir.
Huh?
One.
It's 1 acre.
Now, before you
1
muddy
acre.
the water and change it.
Yeah,
1 acre?
1 acre.
Okay. I always thought it was 2.5 acres.
The AR3 is the 2.5.
Proposed.
Proposed, yeah.
Okay, so if you put AR3 in, you're gonna do away with AR1?
Well, to keep,
No.
if you wanted to keep controls, in my opinion, you approve AR3 because that's an approved piece, and I think everybody would feel comfortable with that at a minimum of 2.5 acres with 1 primary house and 1 accessory dwelling. If you did away with AR2, you would have everything go over to your AR1, so if they wanted to subdivide it, would just have to come before us and we would approve it at that point.
Well, I've sit here and listened to y'all talk, and I mean to tell you, it's so muddied up, I don't know how in the world you're gonna ever keep it straight. I mean,
probably
how
the
you
most
gonna
truthful thing
enforce,
to
how
say.
you gonna enforce all these rules, you know? Really, you're not enforcing what's going on now, because people are doing things that's not supposed to be done in that zone, and they're getting away with it. The reason I moved to Effingham County was to get away from Chatham County, all that trash down there. Why are we gonna let them come up in, people come up in and build all these warehouses and subdivisions and just mess up the rural atmosphere? That's the reason I moved up in. I'd like to see it stay that way. Nobody likes change but a baby.
Mr. Jimmy,
I agree
we
with
are
you and I
working on,
disagree with you.
Oh, we're good though.
Mr. Jimmy, we're working on that stuff though.
If Parker's bought something from me, I'd advertise for him too.
And I'm proud somebody let you come up here when you came.
I don't know if I should follow that or not. I'm Rita Elliott. I'm with Effingham, Georgia Green, Ag. I think you're going to need more than AR 1, 2, and 3 changes to keep the rural character of the county that y'all say this is supposed to be for. Have you considered conservation zoning at all? And I'm throwing this out right now in AR 1, 2, and 3 because I don't know where else to put it. I don't see any plan. The only plan I see in any of these A's, B's, H's, I's, or anything is for development in every single zone. So if you want to keep any aspects of rural Effingham County that we all love, obviously, you have to do something else. There's a saying in the dive community, plan the dive and dive the plan. Well, the only plan we have is for development. We need to have a plan for conservation to keep some aspects. We can't keep it all, obviously, but we need some plan to keep some of the county rural for all sorts of different reasons in conservation. There's lots.
Whose property are we going to take?
Nobody's.
Okay, so we buy property to conserve
There's
it?
conservation easements that are very successful. There's grants to purchase
But it has to be
property.
our property. It's somebody else's property right now.
Exactly. And we might come up to you and say, you know, we have a grant for $1 million, would like to buy your tract. You might say no.
Yeah, if we could do that, that'd be
Okay,
great.
yeah, I'm not advocating taking anybody's property. And I don't know why people assume that if it's conservation, by God, they're gonna take my property to do it. That's not the case.
How do they do it, Ms. Rita? Say if people have some property and they've got acreage and they would be concerned or interested in doing something like that. So there's grants available to do that through the
There
county
are.
or through the individual?
There's state grants and there are federal grants as well, so.
Well,
there's-
and there are people that's already put land in conservation trust anyway, in this
Yeah, we
county.
do have
Right.
some already. I've seen them come
Yeah.
up before the board.
There's-
They're already, now that's a choice of the people, but still, there's.
And there's
that-
several
happened
good
along the way
examples
with
recently. You know, Green Island in Chatham County just got $3 million grant to purchase a huge area of land for conservation.
Full grant,
Pardon?
full grant.
State grant.
Well,
So
and,
there-
and also I can say we had put up, it just didn't get a lot of traction about a year and a half ago. The state has come up with its own grant funding, which is a farmland preservation grant, which is different, right? It doesn't, it leaves it for agricultural use, not for undisturbed use, but where the state can contribute a grant to match to match local funding, either private or public, to basically purchase the development rights of an active farm. So there are kind of things that wouldn't cost any money. It keeps the property on the tax roll because it's still farm property, but that's an option. And then you're starting to see a lot of, actually, there's a lot across the river in Jasper County where massive tracts
Keep
are being-
Chelsea rural.
Yeah.
They're really making a move to try to save their rural aspects of their county too, because that's what people love, and that actually brings in money. It brings in economic tourism, cultural heritage tourism, and those tourists spend way more money than somebody that's coming to go shopping at the Walmart or whatever.
And we are, Ms. Ellie, I'll tell you, we're putting our money where our mouth is, but we've having difficulty, and I can't speak to much of it because it is property acquisition, but we're desperately looking for, so as long as we can put it to public use, it doesn't mean it has to be a ballpark, it could be nature trails.
Exactly,
But
put your boat in the
It can be
lake or
difficult finding
whatever.
that property,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, we're definitely not opposed to doing something like
Yeah.
that, but getting
That's
somebody to
great.
cooperate on the other end
Great.
is the
Well,
hard part.
But I think that willingness to do it, you have to go beyond that. You have to have a plan. And y'all are busy. You're busy people. You've got to deal with AR1s, 2s, and 3s, and people getting married and divorced and dying, all that kind of stuff. So you need a plan. I would strongly urge you to develop a committee that consists of knowledgeable experts in the fields of environmentalism, engineering, all sorts of different things, to come up with some solid recommendations about how Effingham County can do this, not taking people's property, how we can get conservation easements, how we can get grants on different levels to fund this, and really start to put together a package of what this could look like, so that we're not looking at these land use maps all the time from a, how do we develop the hell out of shit, but how do we take this and figure out the best ways to preserve and protect a lot of our environment and still having, the amenities and developments that we need to thrive.
We don't use that just for development. We also use it to restrict development in certain areas. So it's not just a tool to go gangbusters. It's also a tool to keep industrial out of certain areas and other things. So it goes both ways with that. We're not using it as a full-blown development tool, I can assure you.
Right. Well, I will probably talk about that in the HI and LI conversations to come. That's all.
You notice that hadn't grown any, like
Pardon?
2 or 3 years, the HI that I'm aware of, we haven't grown any industrial districts from the future land use map we did 2 years ago that I'm aware of.
Well, I'm just looking at all the warehousing coming in.
Yeah, but if you look at what we go by, which is a living document, it can change. We haven't changed any of it. There was some that was transitional, there was some that was industrial, and then AR.
Yeah, and you had so
We
many
haven't-
municipalities that got approved as well.
We
like
haven't
Enrique.
established anything.
Yeah, I guess my point is there's millions of square feet of warehouses going in and can continue to go in. And with each one of those is just, you might as well wipe it off. It's a desert wasteland when they're done. It's just annihilating every single green space in that area, which affects everything around it as well. So
We've got
That's-
green space coming for those areas too. We're trying to make some changes even in those areas as people develop. So it's not just the housing areas we're looking at green space in those areas as well.
in industrial,
Yes, ma'am.
great. So permeable pavement?
Yes. Well, grassy areas, I know we've looked at some.
Yeah, I mean, the
Trees,
problem is
greening.
that we are putting that, and it's one of the things we'll talk about under industrial, we are putting some green space requirement in industrial zoning, but
Which is the first time I've seen
there's just
that.
not a lot of land that's in the map that you discussed, that the future land use map, that's appropriate for rezoning to industrial anymore. There are some tracks by I-16, yes, but for the most part,
That's it.
we're not making it apply to things that already are in existence.
But if they haven't been
effectively.
rezoned yet, we can apply those.
If they're not zoned yet, that's right.
Because
Yeah.
they could be on the future land use map as potential industrial, if they're not rezoned, we can apply those new rules
Yes.
as they go.
Well, that would be
And then have
good.
the screening. So we are.
That would be
against that.
good.
It's
And
not-
permeable pavement,
I mean,
No, for the new stuff.
and also light pollution, all those things would go a long way to curbing some of that environmental destruction.
Yes, ma'am.
So, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
you've already been up one time, sir.
Sorry. Just wanted to come up because one of the things you said inspired me. There is a development path to conservation subdivisions too, right? The county doesn't have that yet, but there's an opportunity that we can look into that in the future, that if there's a corridor that the aesthetics are particularly important on, that you can establish that through conservation in a certain area, you could do still development in another piece of it, and maybe even allow a tighter development pattern in that other piece than if you were to apply R1 standard to the entire piece. And that way you protect what needs to be protected, and you allow the development or the property owner to have some rights in the remaining adjacent communities. We don't have to solve that for ourselves. There's ordinances throughout the southeast and throughout the country that do that too. So one of the things I would offer up that I think makes those most successful is the fact that usually they're by right option. That you've got an option to it, so you can preclude some of the NIMBYism that ends up destroying projects sometimes, because it's considered to be a good project for all. And then one thing I will say, I know we're not talking industrial, but since it was brought up just then, I would commend the county. Actually, you probably have more pervious area on any industrial projects than any other surrounding areas because of the amount of buffering and things that you have already implemented. So I know that they aren't popular typically, but they do, serve a significant function to our region and our county. And I think we actually have some pretty good ones, and there are some pretty strong protections that this county already
That's some
provides.
serious berming
Yeah,
and
so.
some.
Yeah, we just had a discussion today with someone about the conservation, so we'll be setting some meetings up on that. So.
What was that thing you called that development that you said incorporated conservation with it?
Just a conservation-based subdivision, right? Or
Conservation-based.
some places will call them,
Farming type
yeah,
subdivisions.
well, it depends on what you're wanting. The beauty of conservation is it can be, we want to preserve
Whatever
a
you wanna
farm, we want to
conserve.
preserve the trees, we want to preserve this corridor. It's important that we have a 100, 200-foot area that looks the same for the next 100, 200 years. If you do that, we'll let you do something that's a little bit more intense maybe than typical behind that, because you've achieved
There is,
what
but
we
you
want to protect
preserve.
in this corridor. It may not matter to us what you do 500 or 1,000 feet behind that corridor. So I just think there's ways that, it doesn't have to, the idea of the conservation aspect can be beneficial to all, but to actually just say the entire piece of property goes in, then yes, of course, I think you're right. Somebody's got to come in and buy that piece of property. to
It's not an
conserve.
all or nothing
Right.
approach. So.
Yeah, so anyway, thanks, I'm sorry. I promise I won't stand up again on this part.
So, I guess did staff get what they need on the AR discussion?
Absolutely not.
Did we muddy the waters a whole
So
lot more
just-
for you?
Just in review, we've considered taking AR2 out. We've considered or discussed keeping it
Well, I
in
think-
place, but removing the half-acre restriction. And I think it'd be viable to keep it in the AR1 as is, or as newly designed. The AR2 with minus the half-acre, and implement
Take that
the
out.
AR3
That's-
as an easy route for people that would be palatable.
I'm not in favor of eliminating AR2.
No, I said keep it in place as is minus the
Okay.
half-acre.
The half acre.
I don't have a strong opinion on AR3, but I'm afraid we're missing an opportunity, but that's just me.
And then
I don't have a strong opinion either way, because it doesn't
AR3 to
affect my
be
district.
a palatable path with just the single primary residential on it and the accessory dwelling. I mean, I believe that does some conservation, preservation for the AR area. And then everything else would just have to come before us for review.
Yeah, if you're splitting a 6-acre lot and you're asking for something besides AR3, then there's probably something else up your sleeve. But if you're asking for AR3, you're probably doing what you said you're gonna do, because you gotta have that 2.5 acres. That's. I mean, if
Right,
I-
and I think in the issue of leaving AR2 open as is without the half acre.
Right. And it may be permissible times where you want to give AR to that, okay, you're okay to do
Right,
full
you
lots.
know,
Maybe it's
then you
appropriate
leave
there,
it up to the.
but it needs to be presented
Or
to
do
us
we
on
just
what it's
make
going
Right,
to.
so we know
AR2
what's
is-
going on and nobody comes up
Yeah.
a year or 2 years from now.
That's
and it
right.
Totally
Make
something
it
different than what they
conditional.
told us.
Like if somebody's got a, 80-acre piece of land, I want to carve off an acre for my son. Well, why don't you carve off 2.5 acres for him? That could be a pushback that you all bring up, right? Is that,
Another mechanism.
and therefore it leaves it all in your hands, rather than the zoning restrictions hands. But it does give another tool in AR3 where you can tell them, I would recommend AR3. On that. I don't, and Lee, you may correct me on this, but if it's a less restrictive zoning, could it be changed at the meeting, or does it have to go through the entire process again? So if someone came in to rezone something AR2, and then the property owner says, you know what, I'm okay with it being AR3 and it being 2.5 acres, would it then have to start the entire process over? Or it depends?
Yeah, I think in the past, that's what we've done historically, but we probably need to look at the ordinance and probably add that as an option.
Okay. Does that make sense for everybody? I don't want to do it if it's.
We don't want to encourage people to start with a low bid.
Yeah,
Every
that's the
meeting,
other
but-
option, yeah.
I hate moving away from the 5 acres. I do. I understand your logic, Let's see how it's finally written, but
Okay.
I just hate moving away
See,
from
I
that 5
see it
acres.
as moving away from the 1 acre.
Yeah.
That's just how I see
Yeah,
it.
but
That's how see
I
it.
just feel like it's just saying this is gonna happen. I will definitely be against saying 2 houses on it. I mean, I'll fight that and lose it, but I don't think you're accomplishing anything
I
then.
agree.
'Cause you may as well just leave it
I
alone.
don't think that's the point.
Yeah, so, I don't know. I hate moving away from that 5 acres. I just feel like we're opening the door. But anyway, we'll keep looking.
Yep. Move on to B2?
Discuss anything else
Yeah, we've
today?
got, 33 minutes to cover
Okay.
B1.
The Bs, a lot of the zonings have been simplified with, on the Bs and the Is by simply saying, what really separated B1, B2, B3, and the industrial were the uses, right? And so since we've moved to the table of permitted uses, we get rid of those uses that are listed in the ordinance, and we just simply tell them, we'll put in there, permitted uses, refer to the TPU with a link. The next item is not the uses, I'm sorry, the buffers. Again, we're gonna put it in there saying refer to the buffers, in the general provisions of the ordinance, with a link there. What it really comes down to, and one of them I know was controversial, and I didn't think there was a tremendous amount of support from it, but the first one being the green space requirement, and we did this in industrial as well, where that the goal here is it's not open space, right? Because we don't need you to do a playground or a ball field or something like that on your business property, but we do want you to preserve green space in either landscaped or undisturbed fashion. What we simply put in there, which doesn't exist now, is a 15% requirement. And the way that we determine that requirement, the base of that is that you take the total land acreage, you subtract, wait, do we do that for green space? Do we subtract out wetlands?
Yes, but only wetlands. Because this allows your landscape areas, your buffers, tree
Okay,
planting.
so then we subtract out the wetlands, and then we determine 10% of what's remaining would have to be some sort of green, either landscaped or undisturbed. And the other requirement on that is because you want, for aesthetic reasons, you prefer that to be visible, is we required that 50% of that that at least 50% of the street frontage be landscaped to enhance the overall look, right? Obviously, that 50%, what you do in the front can be used as a credit towards that 15%. Businesses are kind of very tough. I mean, it's very tough to guide them without a architectural review board, architecturally. So we think the way that we try and make them look more appealing is through the green space and landscaping requirements. And the other thing to take in consideration, the more restrictive, most of the commercial property in the county, as we anticipate it to be, will be in some sort of commercial corridor. That's either 21, Hodgeville, Effingham Parkway, or eventually 80 when that corridor study comes out. So those will be subject to the design requirements and the landscape requirements of the particular commercial corridor design standards, and so which would be a little bit more restrictive than the base that we're talking about here. But if you've got a situation where you've got, let's say, a commercial node somewhere, these design requirements would, these green space requirements would come into place. The second thing is the sidewalk, and again, this I think there was some general kind of discussion in the steering committee about this and the different types of commercial areas in the county. I mean, you can get a gas station in Egypt, right? Am I going to put a sidewalk there? It doesn't make much sense. But most of the stuff on the south end of the county, again, will probably be in the commercial corridors, which do have pedestrian requirements. So,
Could we do more planning or something versus a sidewalk? I mean, to have a piece of commercial property,
yeah, sure.
nothing else around it, and you just got a strip of concrete going across the front versus maybe put more shrubbery out there or something.
Well, then they said that
I
they
thought we were
would
doing like an escrow account or something.
do an escrow account to pay for that would do something, it says
Or
here.
donate, or a certain percentage.
So a
Payment
certain amount, it
percentage.
would- if you
Yeah.
require it,
Oh, yeah,
you
that's
put
right,
that in.
that's
Yeah,
right.
payment.
Yeah, and so
They-
that was our way out of it, to say, and we, it's determining how to base that fee. Where we say, if you want to put it there, you don't have to put it there. The county, we would have to establish a separate fund, to essentially that utilize for expanding, pedestrian access in the county. That you can, because you don't want to just pay in lieu and then have it go right into the general fund, right? You'd like to see that you're paying in lieu so that it expands pedestrian access somewhere else in the county. That was the thought of the pay in lieu.
And what was the cost? I mean, like you said, up in Clio, somebody builds a convenience store, a sidewalk across the front.
The
That'd be
estimated
ridiculous.
cost of the sidewalk installation is what it says.
Yeah, that's
Would
what
be
we
the
were
cost.
using as a pay in lieu. We could come up with a formula if you want.
Would think, I mean, just to penalize, like I say, it doesn't make any sense to put a sidewalk for the county to come and say, we don't need a sidewalk, we want you $15,000 or $20,000 it costs to build it.
Do we
Well, we're
designate-
Put it in the
Requiring it
south
else-
end for Rogers District, cause people walk down there. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I would.
But
I
don't
would
worry,
tweak
Forrest, with
that.
your development, they're gonna be walking up here too.
They're gonna walk up out the woods in Clio.
Would, would we only require that in our overlay districts or?
It is required in the overlay district, so this would only really apply
To overlay?
to stuff outside the overlays.
Okay. Gotcha.
Could we, since you mentioned the permeable paving, could we put that in there somehow, that
Well-
you could, that you'd have that?
I think what we
that
can
type of
do,
Paving, because it does make a difference where you see it, as far as the water runoff, and we do have areas, particularly it wouldn't hurt for it to
It-
go down instead of out.
that's right. And so I think two ways that they can benefit from this is from, that we can put where you get kind of extra credit towards permeable. The first is what I think we already do is in the stormwater manual, that, you know, I mean, if you've got permeable pavement, it's obviously not impervious, so it's not, you don't base your calculations on it.
100% credit.
Yeah. But the second way is that we can somehow figure that into the green space requirement as a possibility.
Or you could write it off for the sidewalk somehow.
Or you can swap it off, you know, that's a possibility too, where you can say, you know, you can credit that, the amount of the sidewalk towards, you know, some sort of permeable parking surface, something that under normal circumstances would be impermeable. You make permeable.
But I don't have a problem with just mandating it too.
Okay.
I really don't, because I'm just,
Curious if
certain
that'd be
things you just
more of
got
a
to do.
case-by-case
I don't know how
basis,
much more
or-
expensive it is, but might not be that much more. They got it, that, down there, if you cross Goshen, where the DeVaro's office is, that's permeable. I don't know.
Is it crushing, I mean, is it solid, or is it just like crushing?
No, it's
Porous.
It's like
porous
pavers.
tiles.
Yeah.
Porous
Or you
tiles.
can actually do the that grid, you know, that you can put a solid grid down that you can park on, and then just you know, and use that instead of asphalt. I mean, there are options.
That sounds
Obviously, your
expensive.
maintenance
Nothing's
costs.
100%.
So in doing that, can they reduce the size of their retention pond?
Yes.
Well,
I mean, this ties to other things too.
It would.
Because you have to build
Yeah,
a certain size retention pond for the runoff if you pave it.
you'd be the one that would know that, right? Or Travis, which one?
You sat down first, I can.
The only thing I was gonna add about the sidewalks is, and again, this may have been thought of, y'all mentioned a lot of your commercial corridors are GDOT roads. So GDOT will dictate what's in that right of way. So they may be perfectly fine putting a sidewalk, but they may not. And I know y'all got that provision in there about, you know, just adding or giving money in lieu of. But I was just gonna throw it out there, just keep in mind that, you know, the county may require something, but then GDOT may not allow it. That's all I was gonna mention about the
Well,
sidewalks.
how
And I think
about
the
the
sidewalks,
permeable? Is that
Fighting
you?
that, we fought that battle in on a piece of sidewalk in front of McDonald's in Rankin it's still going on.
I mean, I think the sidewalk's a good idea, but, that may be an issue. But you just might have to address it when you cross that bridge.
And I think the issue with with GDOT is that's why we have these corridor studies, so that we actually present them to GDOT and get them. What they'll do is say, that's fine, when we widen the road, you can do it, but you're paying for it, right? But you can also use the federal MPO dollars for that as well. But go ahead.
I'm back again. The idea that sidewalks and the payment in lieu of, I actually think I threw that out at one point. It's not for sidewalks, but it's for trees. The city of Savannah uses a very similar program for trees. If you have a site that you can't meet trees, or they don't think, you know, it's not a wise investment, it's a waste of money to put in something, but they don't let you just get away without it, right? They implement and have a very specific fund that goes to fund putting in trees in the park spaces, street tree replacement, things of that
Chelsea
nature.
just a minute ago.
So that is a tried and true. Now, whether or not it should be 100% of it, I agree. There's rural parts that maybe the sidewalk makes no sense, but it is a way to create some funding for trails and pedestrian improvements, which I think rank very highly on a lot of the improvements that the citizens ranked in the recreational report. Related to the impervious, they certainly have their place for sure. They're not a perfect solution. Some instances where the soil already doesn't drain well, it doesn't really work. You're just filtering it to go into a subgrade pipe. And related to cost, it's probably 2.5 to 3 times the cost to pay, typically pave, if not more. And they do the big thing, and the reason most civil engineers aren't willing to reduce the size of the storm ponds is without maintenance, they are all a filter, right? That's what an impervious pavement, impervious thing is filter. Then it can create some challenges related to the lack of the infiltration that it was supposed to do. So if there's encouragement, I would highly encourage also that there's a maintenance plan required associated with it, because they absolutely require maintenance that's much different than maintaining asphalt or concrete. So.
It's just like the Dollar General that I brought up at the last meeting. That pond is just about grown over now.
Right.
That's a great point. Permeable paving is a filter. That's the whole idea. We filter the water before it goes into our wetlands and our drinking water. And when we have asphalt, we don't get that. So all of the pollution is running off into our drinking water, into our creeks, Dasher Creek, Abercorn Creek, Savannah River, the glass you drink. So it's there. It's like that for a reason. One thing. Can we go ahead and have the requirement have native trees and plants? Because you're going to have much more success if people plant native trees in the landscaping, native trees and native shrubs. They're from here. It's like if I come to you and say, where's the best place to eat in Effingham County? If I ask somebody in Statesboro, they're not going to know, but you're from here, you know. Native trees and plants grow here. They require less water, less maintenance, less pesticides, less all of that stuff. So it makes perfect sense if we're going to encourage people to have landscaping that's going to be successful and also the best thing for our environment.
We do have a list of plants that we're probably going to be using the same list of plants that we use for the buffer establishment requirements.
Can we revisit that list and make sure
And so we'd have to pare down that, or we can give a higher credit for native species and, you know, a lower credit toward non-native species. I don't want to dictate to somebody, you know, what they can put everywhere, but you know, that's maybe one way that you do it, is that that if you use native species, you get you don't have to do the density that you would have that if you just everything. But I'm just trying to come up with a solution.
Can we not just put it in there? It's not a solution.
What?
Just put it in there would be a solution.
I just sent a tree ordinance that I wanted Chelsea to review, which is a conservation effort that did name
that
native
the Rinkin?
species. Ma'am?
Is that the Rinkin tree? Okay. Good.
It did name some natives. It did, you know, have a value established to it to encourage, you know, to keep that there. However, if it wasn't, it was to encourage replanting in another area. So
There's a bazillion native trees and shrubs. It's not like we're limiting people. There's a huge list of them. So.
sure. Yeah.
That's not
Kudzu's
native.
not native, thank you. That's the point. Kudzu's not native, exactly. It's a wonderful point you make. That's why we should plant natives,
And
thank you.
no, it is something to, you know, to explore. I mean, it's still in the works. So. Anyone else? Going to move on to the ayes?
Yeah, the eyes are not that much different than the bees, and so and again, we put a green space requirement now on the eyes that weren't there before. The big difference in the eyes is, so in order to prevent blanket industrial zoning, where you could put a steel mill, or, you know, you can put, you know, some, you know, something low impact like a storage, a laydown yard, or a small warehouse facility. We've divided, and based on what you choose, if you've got that zoning, you can do either, right? That's the current, right? So we divide it into light industrial and heavy industrial. So that decision is made at the rezoning, not at the, you know, it's not at the discretion of the property owner. They determine at the zoning whether it's going to be a light industrial property or heavy industrial property. And so therefore that is subject to the table of permitted uses. I will tell you, the only other change that we did, because you have this existing zoning that you can't fit everything else in, right? So we leave the existing, anything that's currently I-1 zoned stays I-1 zoned, and we just put the wording in there that if it's and you have a different size buffer, whether it's determined to be light or heavy. So we basically say that if you're going to use the light industrial buffers, then it has to be a use in the L1 light industrial LI zoning, and if you're going to do the heavy industrial wider buffers, it has to be a permitted use in the HI zoning, and that way it just it's easier for us to track. It really doesn't. It doesn't really change any of these existing zoning, industrial zonings, but it's just easiest for the track because we have so much land that is already zoned I-1. So future, you'll have to go light industrial, you'll have to tell us in advance and apply for light industrial zoning or heavy industrial zoning. And those lists are on the table of permitted uses.
Then with all the old I-1s, are we going to be able to distinguish between those that are currently out there? That some are light and some are heavy. Are we going to leave those alone? Or, I mean, how does anyone know which ones are which?
The issue, and this is why you kind of want to, why I don't think the I-1 works, right? So that if you've got a use that you put in there that's light industrial, and you establish your buffers based on that, and then a new tenant comes in and does it for a heavy industrial, if you don't catch it, right, and tell them you can't do it there unless you widen the buffers, it becomes a little bit of a challenge. The L1, the LI zoning and HI zoning kind of takes care of that because you're either or. Not either end, and so it'll help on that. We're just going to have to look at every kind of new business license permit on I property to make sure that it conforms with the current buffers that are already established. Or if it's new construction, they'll obviously have to establish their buffers at that point.
And in the interest of time, if there's no more questions, let's move to item number 2 for
the buffers.
The buffers, yes.
So, just in the interest of time, one of the big questions that came up on the buffers was the punishment, and the punishment is just completely. We put a stop work order on. We then basically go into negotiations with the property owner, and then in every case that's happened, they agree to reestablish either at a higher density of planting or include a fence in that and reestablish the buffer. But to the point of the board, it's been happening more often, so it needs to be more. And so our recommendation that we're going to come up with, and I'll just use this as a starting point for y'all, is that you start off by saying that your minimum fine, right, is that you're fined for every quarter acre of disturbed buffer, right, with a minimum of $500 per quarter acre, and that number can change. I'm just throwing it out there, and then with a minimum fine of $500. Right, so if it's less than a quarter acre, you get charged $500. If you disturb a half an acre, it's $1,000. And then in addition to that, they have to replant the buffer at a landscaping plan approved by the county administration at up to triple the rate. And that's all determined by administration, right? Some cases, it just won't, that much density may look awful, but we can require them to reestablish that buffer at triple the rate that we require if you were just simply to establish a buffer on a grass field.
And what is our rate?
What's that?
What is our present rate?
It's kind of this formula
Yes.
that we have.
Yep, so,
I'd like to see a hefty fine and also a minimum stop work order.
Yeah, I
time
think the stop
period.
work order goes without saying that because they're going to have to come up with the landscaping plan before that's released.
Minimum 2 week, even if you've got it worked out, you stop, and $5,000 start fines. And it needs to be steep, or
Needs to be
people are gonna
s-
keep doing it.
I agree, it needs to be steeper, and Beth and I were speaking earlier today, just talking about, you know, how a tree ordinance would go kind of hand in hand with this as well, because we'd be able to establish somewhat of a value of a tree, have an arborist come out and establish, you know, what was, what I'll call a tree that's worth preserving. And, if you established a value for that, to either be issued as a credit to be replanted somewhere else, or it could also help us establish value in some of this as well for what needs to be there. Because like Beth said, many times you disturb a buffer, you're never gonna put it back how it was before.
Yeah, it's gone.
And a fence is something that needs maintenance over time.
so Mr. Chairman, our current rate now is 1 tree per every 15 linear feet.
Okay.
So it's very minimal.
I think, to pick up on the, you know, what Damon said, I think we do need some specifics, because there is more, you can't replace when you disturb that type of thing. And I think if we don't really hit these developers in the pocket, because they don't seem to care right now, and I think that the stop work order is the key. And I have no problem with saying, you can't go back to work until you've totally replaced to our satisfaction. And that may take 6 months. Now, that's gonna hurt people, but I'm telling you, we just had these people just mow them down like, that's the part I think that irritates me more than anything else. You know, it's like, so what? I'll write you a $25,000 check. We'll throw a few trees back up there. We'll build you a fence that you're gonna have to maintain, because we're gonna be gone.
Right.
And I think from what I've been talking to people, that's, you can't do any work is what really hits them in the pocket. And so if you sit there and go, if you tear this buffer down, until you plant it back to our satisfaction, you're not gonna drive another nail.
And I can tell you one thing.
And I think
Goshen-
that'll get their attention.
the Goshen buffer, now they're using it for storage for pipe.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying, put it back to
Put it
our
down.
satisfaction,
Yeah.
and then you can start driving
Now,
nails. And I know,
they're-
Ryan, you got to say something about that.
On
but
our site plan requirements, do
I'm
we
telling you,
require
you
much of
don't,
a,
you don't get their
a
attention.
tree survey?
No.
No.
Okay, I mean, is that something we need to look at in some, I mean, I know you can't do it.
Well, I mean, I think, and if you have a tree ordinance, it is.
Yeah.
Right. That's-
We
I feel
could
like the cart's
require
before
a
the
tree
horse right
survey
now.
for the buffer, you know, because that's the protected area. But without a tree ordinance, they can do a tree survey and then just clear cut it.
Yeah.
So everything but the buffer. And so, I mean, that's one thing that we can do. We can, you know, you had an idea that I think would help on this, but go ahead.
So a lot of places that really care about tree protection, they issue the development permit in 2 steps. Your erosion control and tree protection fence permit, you go put that work up, you have the inspectors come out, you have to have basically a pre-con that's on site once that erosion and tree protection fence is up. What standard that is, it could just be erosion control fence. Places that really want protection require like orange fencing or even barrier fencing to protect the trees.
Sometimes chain link.
Sometimes chain link, yeah, it depends on how aggressive you want to get. But that does take away the aspect of where the buffer is supposed to be, because if staff doesn't agree that they got the buffer in the right spot, you don't start clearing the rest of the site, right? So you have to establish that, get it reviewed, and then at that point, I know it's different than what our typical process is, but at that point is actually when your rest of your clearing, grading, site development permit happens. And then, I mean, it is a 2-step process. It does add time, but, Ms. Beth, you're right, time is very important, so it's as punitive as money is sometimes.
Well, I
So
mean, you have
that-
an on-site,
that-
you got a GC that's hired some guy to come clear the land, and it's flagged presently now, right? Is it just kind of flagging?
Yeah, we
down there?
attempt to flag it, and, you know, it's sometimes difficult because some of the trees are,
Yeah, they're
you know,
kind
they cross over.
Off and on, yeah.
But
just
I
another
like, I
step
do
to
like this
check.
idea
It is
simply.
a two-step, yeah.
Yeah, simply because it not only protects the county and the neighboring properties, but it protects us from any disagreement with the builder as to
What the
the
buffer is.
placement of, where the buffer is in advance, right?
Yeah, and I would
So-
suggest pictures that document what, it'd be easy enough to do that. And it is, again, it's not a new idea. It's done a lot in places that are
But it's
very
not
protected,
arbitrary, it's on
very
paper,
protected.
it's a survey, there's that,
Right.
that buffer is somewhere.
That's right.
It
And
is
so,
100% true,
but
but-
before anything is torn down,
Yeah.
we're
right.
out there and we come to an agreement as to
Yeah.
where it is.
I like the idea of
So
a
Ryan, are
fence.
they doing, I mean,
like the idea of the
for
fence.
sake of argument, a string or something, like tying it off the whole way and this is
Well,
your?
Well,
that's
it
why
just
it's
depends
back
on
fence.
what the standard is, but something that identifies it. It shouldn't be,
So
to
it's
me,
a
it shouldn't just be
physical-
flagging that could be knocked down.
I agree.
It's at least,
Right.
it's at least the silt fencing is clearly established, that the
Right.
line of the silt fencing is the new buffer line that we are not getting
You're setting a
into.
true barrier marker. Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, some places go very aggressive and it's well beyond
Silt
the
fence
silt
5
fence.
foot off of the,
Yeah, I don't think it's something you solve with industrial
the
or
idea of
B1. It probably is something, at the end of the day, it's solved very well with the tree ordinance, but that is the way a lot of places that really can care about it, because it does establish it, and everybody, the owner, the county, the contractor, are all at that pre-con meeting, and they all agree to this is it, or this isn't it, and you're able to help
Having
with
that
that.
and then having the, a substantial
On the-
penalty.
And the penalty, yeah.
If you have that, you can have even more severe penalties because,
Yeah,
It was
there's
more
clearly stated,
egregious.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's more egregious, right?
David Howes. My question is with the industrial buffer and warehousing. Currently, I think all of the warehouses in the county are zoned in the heavy industrial. And with that classification, it requires a 300-foot buffer between residential properties. Under the proposed changes, a lot of those, if not all of those warehouses going forward would fall under light industrial, which is just a 150-foot buffer for the residents. I think it was mentioned, but I would like clarification. A lot of the warehouses, as I mentioned, currently approved, if it was approved 6 months from now, it would be light industrial. So how is the county handling or going to handle requests to reduce the current 300-foot buffer for developers that say, well, we're really only going to do light industrial? Can we follow the 150-foot buffer? I think it was mentioned, but I didn't quite understand.
Sure.
For the existing
existing zone properties.
So there are some properties, or particularly ones that are larger industrial parks, which is, I would say, a vast majority of our industrial zone properties out there. That's actually in the condition of the rezoning. So even if the rezoning, even if the buffers were to change, they're still, it's a condition of the rezone. I'll give you an example is that industrial park that goes against Chimney Road, right? It specifically says in that zoning that the minimum buffer is 300 feet, on Chimney Road, with like a 12-foot berm or something that we did there. So even if, and I just had the conversation with the guy last week, he's like, well, now that the buffer zone changed, I said no, because it's specifically a requirement in a condition in your zoning. So we could bring it down to 0 and you would still have to have a 300-foot buffer. So that's the ones where we specifically put the buffer and berm requirements. And it's the same thing for the Exley property. I believe we have it listed, and I may be wrong on this, on the Omnitrax property, the 300-foot buffers. But if it was a one-off property, yes. If they have not developed the property, no, actually, it doesn't. I'm mistaken. well, that's right. If they have not developed the property and they choose to do a light use on it, then, or which would be warehouse at this point, then the light buffers, the buffer requirement for light industrial would apply, versus the heavy industrial one.
Even if it's currently zoned as heavy industrial?
Even if it's currently zoned as heavy industrial, because heavy industrial allows, if it's zoned as I1, right?
Okay.
They allow the smaller buffers. They just have a different definition of where, of what is a light industrial use versus a heavy industrial use. So if I wanted to build a manufacturing plant for appliances, that's considered light industrial, right? That under the current zoning would still be the 150-foot industrial. But if I wanted to build a steel mill, it would be the 300 feet, right? So the buffers really are established when construction starts, right? Because at that point, they're really, if they've got a 300-foot buffer in there, and then we change the buffer ordinance, unless they want to expand their building, there's not much the ability for them to take advantage of it, if you know what I'm trying to say. So if anyone's got an undeveloped piece of property that is currently zoned I1, right, that they would be subject to the current buffer requirements, not the buffer requirements when it was rezoned.
Unless they're conditioned.
Unless it's a
there's
specific
conditions.
condition, right.
So my problem with that, I guess, would be that, speaking specifically of the warehouses, as you've all been to all of the meetings, I've been to a lot of the meetings, the contention on the public side, the resident side, is often the buffer, right? And there's a lot of back and forth of the buffer should be this or that. And if the residents of these current buildings say, hey, at least we got a 300-foot buffer, and some individuals, maybe not all of them, but some individuals are able to, with no notification to the residents, with no reclassification as light industrial, the residents have no idea that all of a sudden what they thought was 300 feet is now 150 feet until it's done.
So you're
Well,
speaking of existing buildings, so wouldn't it be married to the condition that it was zoned to in the original? No matter who the property owner is?
The
Existing, I would presume, undeveloped. I mean, it's already
undeveloped.
zoned. There's nothing there yet.
And it's a good point, and I think there might be a way, I'm just thinking in my head a way around it, is to say that that the I think the difference is the warehousing, so that what I think for the establishment of the buffers for just the I-1, the existing properties that are out there that are already zoned, that people thought they were getting a certain buffer
And it's next to
at the
residential.
rezoning, the only difference is the warehousing. And so we could make that case that those warehouses, that buffers for that use, that TPU, is the old buffers, the 300.
Well, I was looking at the matrix for the buffers.
Yeah.
But there is no I-1 in it. So I think you put the I-1 in it and you put the 300, right?
Yeah, so what we were gonna do is
Makes sense.
simply say that the light, just to try and make it easy, but we can actually put a separate line for I-1, except the problem is it's all approved in I-1,
And that's gonna be a zombie district.
Yeah,
right?
all the zoning's approved in I-1, but whether it's determined to be a heavy use in I-1 or a light use in I-1 is just very complicated. So if I think the real problem here is results of warehousing, right? We simply say that in the I-1 district, if your use is determined to be in the light industrial, an approved use in light industrial, you will be subject to the light industrial buffers with the exception of warehousing.
You could also condition
And
that, Dave.
all those categories under
Well,
warehousing.
why wouldn't,
Say just put it conditional too.
why wouldn't we just do this? Because I don't think there are many out there
That's right.
that would be warehousing. Most of them have it on as a condition of zoning.
We could
So I don't think
do-
there's many.
Yeah, there might be a
That you
few.
put it as the larger buffers on I-1. Then they can get a variance from that if they feel they fit within the LI and come and ask for the variance. I'm just
I
trying
got
to.
you.
I think the chairman-
That would trigger a public hearing and.
Yeah, and I got your point on that. Why don't we just
Make it
make
conditional
all,
on light industrial.
I don't recall us ever
Permitted
getting any
in
light
the-
industrial in I-1, if you remember,
I
if
know,
you
yeah.
remember. So if we just simply say on the buffer table, put
That's what
I-1
I'm
in
looking
there and say it's the heavy industrial buffers
Yeah.
for anything that's I-1, whether it's a light industrial use or a heavy industrial
And maybe they
use.
have a valid reason to ask for the
Yeah,
150.
they can
but it
come in and
triggers
say,
it,
hey,
it
this
triggers the
is,
process.
this would have been considered a light industrial use at the time, and, we can kind of come in and,
Yeah.
and they can come in and talk about it. But I think to protect what this gentleman is bringing up, we simply say that it's the 300 feet, which it was when they rezoned the property,
Yeah.
right? And we say anything that's I-1 is 300 feet.
Yeah. But I think most of
Does that
the,
answer your question?
yeah,
We're
most
getting-
of the
we're
larger
getting there, yeah.
tracks.
So 300 feet or the berm
Yeah.
formula.
I think most of the
Yeah.
larger tracks, it's
Yeah.
it's a condition of the zoning, so it's
Yeah.
already.
I was gonna say, I can't think of many
Yeah,
that's not
there's
married.
none.
I don't think there
Well,
are, but that could be a
Everyone
catch-all.
we've had
Not
conditional.
all of them, not
Yeah,
to
there's gonna
name
be
names,
something.
but
Yeah.
there are loopholes.
I haven't seen any,
exploited.
besides the first one we had, that doesn't have conditions of the berms that are in the conditions. I'm not aware of any.
It'll come up.
Yeah, it would
but
if it's
it'll
out there,
rise.
but I haven't, not since I've been on the board. in 7
But the point is, it'll come up, and then it'll just kind of, and it will be it'll be a variance request, right? It'll still get posted and so on and so forth. The guy comes in and said, hey, and I can't think off the top of my head what a light industrial use is, right? But it's a light industrial use.
Assembly?
It's not a warehouse. We would like a variance because it was a light industrial use when we rezone the property. They, one meeting can bring it up to you. It gets noticed like everything else so the residents know that we can do that. But the base buffer for all I-1 would be the heavy industrial buffers.
Which is the heavier, which is the larger buffer.
Which is the 300 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point. We can kind of protect the existing property where folks were told something by this board at a meeting, and it, doesn't change, it wouldn't change. So,
I appreciate your consideration.
Yeah, great discussion. It's 5:07, guys. We're gonna adjourn this meeting and take a 5-minute break and reconvene at 5:14.
But I'm telling you,
Yeah. Or help me find a piece of property.
out of way to do it. The world we're belong, and, a man that taught me a lot in administration said, if you can't walk away from your job
good.
for 8 days and depend on the people.
Well, he needs to take advantage of it. I told him, I said, Bo,
You've got the wrong people, and you're not doing it for a long job.
Good to go? Okay.
And of course, it's a
We'll call the meeting to order.
but now that's
why
what
I'm
I
not
messed
a
up.
lawyer.
I agree. I know. Now, see, that's all he can ask, you know? Let's see.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Commissioners regular meeting agenda, July 1st, 2025. The time is now 5:14. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Floyd,
I am here.
Commissioner Burdette,
Here.
Chairman Ron,
Here.
Commissioner Deloach is not present, Commissioner Helmley,
Here.
and Commissioner Kiefer.
Here.
You have a quorum of the board.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Burdette, you mind giving our invocation tonight?
Sure.
Thank you.
Shall we rise? Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for this day. We thank you for being able to be in your presence, Lord, and for the honor and privilege to be representing Effingham County tonight, Lord. I pray that what we do and say and discuss is glorifying to you in some way, and that we're able to help the public in their needs and all their needs, Lord. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I'm going to lead us in our pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to item number 5, agenda approval, consideration of a resolution to approve the agenda. If there are no changes, we have changes?
We do have a change. You will go with me to page 2 of your agenda, under new business, item number 3. Staff has received a request for postponement of this item to July 15th. That is consideration to approve an application by Scott Rosenstock for a preliminary plat for L Track located on Blue Jay Road in the 1st District.
Okay.
And those are your changes.
Postpone to when? I'm sorry.
July 15th.
Okay.
Okay. Did we? And no changes to planning board?
I'm sorry?
No planning board changes?
No, sir.
Okay, very good. All right. If no discussion, I'll ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. Item number 6, minutes, consideration to approve the June 17th, 2025 work session and regular meeting minutes. Entertain a motion.
Would you please count me out of that, because I wasn't here?
From voting due to
Yes, ma'am.
absence. Yes,
Staying
ma'am.
from voting. That's what I couldn't come up with. Thank you.
Make a motion to approve the June 17 minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. Item number 7, public comments. Comments shall pertain to agenda items only. Should you wish to make remarks, clearly state your full name in the microphone before commencing to speak. Correspondence. The agenda packet for this meeting is posted on the county's website. Any additional documentation presented at the meeting shall be submitted to the clerk for receipt, recording, and distribution to the board. Moving on to item number 9, our consent agenda. This section shall include all routine items from which there will be no discussion. Should a need arise for debate, the item can be moved to the appropriate area of the agenda. Item number 1, consideration to approve to ratify and affirm a proposal from Granicus for subscription renewal for the Open Records Program.
That's it.
And that is all.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unopposed, motion carries. Item number 10, unfinished business. Item number 1, consideration to approve the first reading to amend Part 2, Chapter 36, Article 5, hazardous materials of the Effingham County Code of Ordinances. First reading approved 6/17/2025. Entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. Item number 2 is the second reading. Consideration to approve the second reading to amend Part 2 Official Code, Chapter 66 Section 66-33, Waste Disposal, General, and Section 66-37, Regulation of Solid Waste Collection Practices and Carts, Containers, Dumpsters, and Receptacles of the Effingham County Code of Ordinances. The first reading was approved June 17, 2025. No discussion, entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unopposed, motion carries. Madam Clerk, you have item number 1. Consideration to approve Resolution 025-019 in recognition of Dr. Henry W. Young, Sr.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and board members. It is customary for the board to recognize individuals and organizations for their excellence in service. We typically do so by resolution. I had a family member to reach out to me regarding Dr. Henry Young, who has been determined to be the first black doctor in Effingham County. A resolution has been drafted, and it reads as such. Whereas Henry William Young Sr. was born April 21st, 1949 in the town of Clio, Georgia, to the departed Walter L. and Azarine Young, and whereas he is married to his wife Glenda of 51 years, and their union produced 2 daughters, Nidra Young and Nicole Whalen, Esquire, and one son, Dr. Henry W. Young II, who is an emergency room doctor in Columbus, Ohio. The Youngs also adore their 4 grandchildren. And whereas Dr. Young is noted as the first black doctor in Effingham County, as published in an article by the Effingham Herald, February 2024. Over the years, he has gained experience at various hospitals across the state and served on various boards and numerous organizations. And whereas Young has operated as a family practice physician since the 1980s and continues to serve his patients and community at his facility in Cordele, Georgia, to include emergency medicine, nursing homes, and geriatric care. And whereas Dr. Young is a graduate of Springfield Central High School, he continued his educational prowess and obtained his Bachelor of Science at Georgia State University in Atlanta and his Doctor of Medicine degree from the Medical College of Georgia in Augusta. Further, Henry received professional training via internships as well as his residency at the Medical Center of Columbus, Georgia, and special training at Crawford W. Long Hospital of Emory University. Whereas to pay for college, Young joined the United States Air Force, where he ascended to sergeant and administrative and communications specialist, serving in the Philippines and Vietnam War, where he was endowed with the honor of the Airman of the Quarter for Southeast Asia, the Presidential Citation Outstanding Unit Award twice received, and the Good Conduct Medal during his tour. And whereas the Board of Commissioners of Effingham County gleefully honors the excellence of those who have made a positive impact in supporting and shaping the lives of others. Today we recognize Dr. Young for being noted as the first black doctor in Effingham County and for his many accomplishments and dedication to service. Now therefore be it resolved, the Board of Commissioners of Effingham County, Georgia joins the family and friends of Dr. Henry W. Young Sr. in celebrating his 45 years and counting in the medical industry. We stand appreciative of his service to community, his life's work, and his legacy. We have a family member that is here to receive this. Mr. Henry is not here because the family and friends is planning a very special celebration for him on July 12th in Statesboro. Ms. Sabrina Young, if you could come forward, please. Say anything.
I'd like to say thank you, and I appreciate this, because the function that we're having a black tie formal event July the 12th at the venues at Ogeechee Tech, and it's a surprise, and we've been working on it ever since last June.
I hope he's not watching YouTube right now.
Oh, I hope not. I hope not. Okay.
You want to take a picture with
A picture?
No picture? No picture.
But I would like to ask if it was possible, if Ms. Johnson, I know I sent you the invitation, but anybody else would like to join, you're more than welcome. And I ask if you would like to come and present it to them for us, for the family.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Right.
To make this formal, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we approve the resolution.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unopposed? Motion carried and well deserved. Item number 2, consideration to approve a resolution 025-020 to extend the moratorium on rezoning R1, R2, R3, R4, R5, B1, B2, B3, L1, H1, and all planned development districts or classifications to August 19, 2025.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The Board of Commissioners voted to enact a rezoning moratorium in August of 2024. The rezoning resolution moratorium does not pertain to rezoning to or from AR1 or AR2. And of course, it does not pertain to site plan approval, preliminary plat approval, conditional use, final plat approval, assemblage, timber, sign, or pond permits. However, due to our state requirements for advertising and public hearings, and of course, our steering committees and working towards getting the best ordinance for Effingham County, we are asking to extend the moratorium to the August 19th, 2025 meeting, which is that second Board of Commissioners meeting in August.
Very good. Thank you, Chelsea. Any discussion?
Is that long enough?
At the pace we're moving with AR, I'm not sure.
Well, we can do this again if we have to.
Yeah, I mean, we can revisit if we need to, so.
I'll make a motion to extend the moratorium.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. As discussed, item number 3 is moved to July 15th. Moving on to item number 4. Consideration to approve the first reading to amend Appendix C zoning ordinance section 4.1A permitted use table of the Effingham County Code of Ordinance.
And Mr. Chairman, if I can take this one, this was bundled with the ARs and the Bs and the Is. But what we wanted to see, if we could begin the process of moving this up because of it is holding up
That's the guideline.
a school district project. And then what we will do is before second reading, because there were some changes that we discussed tonight, that we will address those and get it out to you early so you can make sure that they're all accurate. And keep in mind, while this might be 2 weeks ahead, if you all decide to approve AR3 zoning, even though it's listed on there, if it doesn't exist, obviously it doesn't. We can't apply it to anything, so it does no harm. And then if you choose not to do our AR3 zoning, we could always we can remove it at a latter meeting. But this is. There's a parcel that the school district needs to build on, and unfortunately, it's allowed in AR zoning. We want to make sure that it's allowed in AR zoning so that they can start the rezoning process to it. If we have to wait for the extra 2 weeks, they actually lose a month on it, and so that's really the basis for it.
Can't we just approve that then? I'm hesitant to approve the whole lot.
Sure.
When we haven't, I understand I don't want to hold them up, but can we just approve that part?
Yeah, we can.
Until we do the rest?
But I have other reasons we need to. There's some other zone properties that we've changed the use to more appropriate, and this would come into effect even on those previously zoned properties. That's my opinion.
And I think for the most part, this becomes a little bit more restrictive.
That's why.
And so it does lock people into.
I didn't recall anything that was less restrictive on this.
More restrictive. That's why I want to hopefully get it
Yeah.
Yeah,
on the
so-
books. But that's,
So you're saying you want to approve the whole thing?
I do because it's more restrictive and I'd like to get it on the books sooner than later for even currently zoned property.
This would come back before us on the August.
And then it will actually have to come back, this is just first reading.
This is
It'll
first
have to
reading.
come back.
in July.
Yeah, it'll have to come back in 2 weeks.
Second meeting in July.
Yeah. And I'm gonna have to take the feedback that you all gave me tonight on, industrial, and somehow, and incorporate that before second reading.
So, okay, we can discuss the workshop or not, so, okay. Very good. Any further discussion? If not, I'm going to entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the, as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have a unanimous, sir? Okay. Motion carries. Moving on to item number 5, consideration to approve resolution 025-021 to adopt the 2025 sanitation fees.
Good afternoon, Mark Barnes, Finance Director. Atlantic Waste ups their rates by 2.5% every year, so this proposed fee increase is just a tad above that to cover our personnel costs. The proposed resolution also clarifies the senior discount, which will be $170 off the normal bill going forward every year.
And if I can add some clarification to that, when we approved the senior discount, it was supposed to be $100 off, but then it got interpreted over the years to $100. And so as the rates have gone up, that subsidy has gone up. And so we want to bring, and we don't have to do this, but we want to bring it to its true intent. So essentially this year, it will still be $100. But as the 2.5% goes up every year, the senior will go up by that small percentage as well. But right now, what was supposed to be a $100 discount is now a $170 discount, just because it was some misunderstanding on when it got put on the tax bill.
Define senior.
Yes, come on.
What?
This is a question.
Senior. How old's senior? What's the age?
It's how, isn't it, don't you have to have that thing on your house, the,
Yeah, you would go into the tax assessor's office and handle it
So
through
whatever
there.
you're done.
get the senior exemption on?
Whatever that requirement is, I
Yeah.
don't know what that is.
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
Where you gotta go to get that?
Go out here, take a left.
Yeah, you don't
Tax
qualify.
assessor.
Tax assessor office, yes, sir.
You paying full price, Mr. Blakey?
Beg your pardon?
Are you paying full price?
I'd like so.
Thank you.
Staff recommends alternative 1 to approve the sanitation fee resolution.
Very good. Thank you, Mark. I'll entertain a motion if no more discussion.
Make a motion, we approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. Item number 6, consideration to approve resolution 025-022 to adopt the 2025 fire fees.
So we've talked about this fee a lot in recent years and how the fire fee has not been fully covering the costs of the fire department, especially when we look at capital expenditures like fire trucks and fire stations. So this change shrinks that coverage gap just a little bit. And additionally, what's new in this year is you'll see the hazardous materials fee section has been added. And staff recommends alternative number 1 to approve the 2025 fire fee resolution.
Very good. Looks like we're going 2 cents per foot and basically $15 residential multifamily, 50 for commercial, and 50 for, gotcha. $5, okay. Very
How
good.
close are we getting to covering the cost? I know when I first got elected, we were coming just so much out of general fund.
It is getting closer. Of course, it was,
A moving target.
as our,
Costs go up.
we added 6 firefighters this year, and we did a kind of a bunch of restructuring on promotions. So that takes a little bit of a bite out of it, but we're still moving in the right direction.
Okay.
And as we free up, what we're doing, if you recall from the workshop or the retreat, that as we free up our contribution from, not from the general, from the special tax fund, what essentially is our insurance premium tax, as we free that up, the goal is to use that to start funding stormwater improvements. So it's a dual benefit there.
And we missed 1 year of trying to get it up because I think it was inflation 1 year that we,
right.
You know, when inflation was hitting everybody, and we said this isn't the year to do this.
About a year ago, the fire fee covered about 50% of the regular operating expenses. That's not counting when they go out and buy a fire engine or something. And this year, I think it's like 65%, so this
Gotcha.
kind of moves it up a little bit closer.
But I mean, as we
That's good.
develop property, we're gonna need more
In theory,
personnel.
it
It's
should
gonna
cover
always be a
100.
moving target, so, yeah.
Very true, yes.
And one thing we could do too is I'll get with Clint, we can kind of show our rates compared to everybody else. I think pretty much by far the lowest.
Yeah.
Certainly among the
We
counties.
always have been.
Very good. No further discussion, I entertain a motion.
Make a motion we approve alternative one.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. Item number 7, consideration to approve resolution 025-023 to amend the Effingham County Schedule of Fees.
This is our annual update of the schedule of fees, and this schedule does include the fire fee and the sanitation fee changes that were just discussed. There's a long list of changes detailed here in the packet. We had a lot of unused fees that were removed this year since they just weren't valid anymore. And this schedule also implements the recommendations of Raftellus, which is the firm that did the water study, and so those changes are in here too. Staff recommends alternative 1 to approve the amended schedule of fees.
I'll entertain any discussion. If none, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the fees.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. Item number 8, consideration to approve resolution 025-024 to amend the fiscal year 2025 budget.
This amendment is for some equipment for the wastewater treatment plant. It was originally approved in the fiscal year 24 budget, and the equipment was approved by the board at that time to be ordered, but there's been a long delay in getting it in. So it's come in here near the end of this fiscal year, and so this amendment just covers that equipment. Staff recommends alternative 1 to approve the resolution to amend the budget.
No discussion, entertain a motion.
Make a motion we approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Moving on to item number 9, consideration to approve a quote and purchase order to buy 2 Kubota M6 Series tractors and 2 Land Pride RC 3712 rotary cutters through the Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Agreement.
Yes, sir. Lauren Schuman, purchasing tech for the county. Effingham County is seeking to approve the purchase of 2 Kubota tractors and 2 rotary cutters. This will reduce reliance on contracted roadside mowing, improve operational efficiency, and leverage inmate labor to extend coverage throughout the county. This purchase aligns with the fiscal year 26 budget and supports long-term cost savings and service enhancements. Staff recommends alternative 1.
And if I could just give some clarity on this, there was, a request to do more cycles of mowing under the contract that we have, and it was rather a large increase, and so what I've simply asked I asked the prison if we were to fund 2 mowers, rather than doing the full mowing, the ditches, and so on and so forth, we just go in between the cycles and just do the first 10 feet with a bat wing, just for visibility and aesthetics. Whether we could do that, they said it's not a problem at all. So it's actually buying the 2 mowers and our cost to do it would be less than what the increase of the contract would have been if we had the third party do it. So this is not to replace them, just to go in between those cycles, particularly recently with a lot of the rain. It just, the number of cycles we have is just not enough.
I have a couple of roads we can try them out on when they come in.
Fair enough.
Good. No discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Lauren. Item number 10, consideration to approve a quote for the purchase and installation of a turnkey LED sports lighting system from Musco Sports Lighting LLC for the pickleball courts at Baker Park using Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing. Trey?
Hey, good evening, Trey Wilkins, project manager. This is just another part of the Baker Park project. If you recall, a couple months ago, we approved a contract with Georgia Power for all of the site lighting and the lighting along the path around the lake. This is specifically lighting for the pickleball courts.
It'll actually be tied into the lighting that exists on the tennis courts as well.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
Perfect. Any questions? If not, entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries.
I'd really rather see this than Georgia Power Infinite bill.
Well, we got a quote from Georgia Power. And so it was,
It's
it
up
was,
there.
well, actually, we quoted Sourcewell to do the entire site. And it was substantially more expensive. I mean, not Sourcewell, Musco. So we got the the best deal we could on the site lighting and the best deal we could on the court lighting.
This is just because Trey likes to play his pickleball at night.
Yep.
Yes, he does.
He's a
Bring it.
avid,
Don't let anybody fool you, son, bring it.
he's got like a sweatband and
I have
everything.
nothing to bring.
He's got.
Can't move today because of volleyball on Saturday, so.
Beach volleyball.
Yeah, knee-high
Beach
socks.
volleyball.
Knee-high socks with stripes. All right, item number 11. Consideration to approve a professional services agreement with Moffett and Nickel for design, permitting, and bid phase support for the Abercorn Landing Waterfront Project, Phase 1.
Yes, sir, this is, they've been working on the detailed design for this project. This is just getting them caught up as far as contracts.
Yeah, I think we gave them a certain percentage contract and to start the permitting process, and this will take us all the way through bid.
Gotcha.
What's our dock status while we're on it?
I need to follow up. There's a new project manager that we're dealing with Moffett Nickel. Our current project manager left
Gotcha,
about a week ago, so they're in a little bit of transition.
gotcha.
Very good. No questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. Item number 12, consideration to approve the purchase and sale agreement for 2 residential lots, 49 and 50 in the Caribbean Village subdivision.
Yes, sir. These are remaining lots of Phase 1 of Caribbean Village. They surround our existing lift station. Per our capital budget, the Park West lift station is in need of immediate dire attention, and so we're going to have to expand that lift station site. And in doing so, it would impact these lots. And then we'll have available land for like a storage area that EOM really needs in this part of the county. And then once we get that laid out, if there's any extra property, you know, we can entertain like a small dog park or some kind of little pocket park or something.
Thank you, Trey. No discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we approve the purchase.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
How many acres is that, Trey? Just trying to find it on here.
One of the lots, it contains a lot of, a good bit of wetland. I think it's about 5 acres total. I can confirm that, but it's, he's currently using part of that for he has a roofing business. So it's already kind of set up with, he's left a bunch of buffers.
Oh, really?
With the,
Okay.
with the adjacent lot, so.
Good deal. Thank you.
All right, we've got 16 minutes before our planning. Tim, we want to move on to reports from Commissioners, Administrative Staff.
Sure. I just want to give you all a heads up for tomorrow, if you've got some availability. We have our second park in about 2 months that we are opening up, and that is at Meldrum, and the time is at 4 p.m. Tomorrow is the ribbon cutting. We've let the public know we had a huge turnout for the Sandhill. Hopefully we'll get one for this. And, you know, we'll have some storyboards that we can kind of show the layout of the remainder of the improvements that we're doing for the park when that goes out to bid, I think next month or so. So hopefully you can go there. I also wanted to, for District 4 and District 3 particularly, but for everyone in general, there's going to be some disruption because of McCall Road closing between, essentially between Ralph Ron and really the right around where the gas station is. It's Webb Road. And the reason is that, as you've noticed, that we've resurfaced most and widened most of McCall Road. That section, if you recall, has such a poor base. It's essentially 1.5 inches over asphalt over clay that we have to rip it all up, put a new base down, and then put the road back down. So that's going to be closed from July 9th to the 23rd. It's not that much of a stretch to do a detour on that, essentially just do Little McCall to Courthouse. And we will get the flashing message signs up hopefully this week to let folks know of the closing, and then we let the media know, but we'll continue to make sure everybody knows.
Both lanes.
What's that?
Both lanes are closed.
Both lanes for through traffic only. Obviously, if you live there, you can still access your property. And I think that's it. Yep, that's all I got.
Very good. Madam Clerk, anything? Mr. Floyd?
Yeah, I've got a complaint from the folks on George Roads. What I understand, the chip mill or whatever International Paper has across Highway 80, they're not supposed to run the debarking or chip mill at night or on Sundays. And he says they've been running it at nights and Sundays. So I don't know whenever that was first rezoned, and we need to get somebody to check into that.
Okay, yeah, I can.
The noise complaint.
I'll have them go there first during the day, and then just kind of give them a warning. And if it continues, we can post a code enforcement at night, just to cite them for the violation.
I don't know what the restrictions were when that was.
I'm not aware of any special restrictions that they have, so I'm pretty sure it's just the regular operation hours.
Well, I think so too, but the citizen seems to think there was supposed to be some no nights and no Sundays, but I don't know. That's it.
Very good.
We'll get on it.
Is that it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Burdette?
I got 3 things. This is probably a dumb question for me. But I did have somebody reach out about the rising cost of utilities in Georgia Power. Do we have any input on that from our standpoint as commissioners? You know, that we have 2
Just that time of year.
experts in Georgia Power.
The Public
right here.
Service Commission.
Yeah, public
I don't think we
PSC.
had any say in that or whatsoever.
We do, and 3.5% of the voters came out to.
Yeah, I asked Laura, I talked to Laura today, and I think it was 670 people came out countywide to go with the primary for the.
It's in a runoff from what I understand, right?
There is a runoff coming. Yeah, that's correct.
It's for the Democratic Party, I think.
That's correct.
It's a runoff.
Yeah, it was a runoff for the Democratic Party. That's correct.
Also, we've had some complaints on the rail, different times of the day, them stopping trains, loading trains. I think this is an Omnitrax area.
Okay.
I want to look into that one, if you can. I had a complaint also on McCall Road where those abandoned homes are as you enter that area. Some of the residents in that area say there's some sketchy activity going on at night. They had a fire the other night. You probably said the fire department was called out to put out a fire there
On McCall?
on McCall.
Where, McCall?
You know where the small industrial area is gonna be? Right on.
Oh, okay, so those two that are, okay.
Right, there's some abandoned homes. but
We
it's-
we have the property owners, so, contact information, so we can reach out to them on it.
Yeah, and I did put a call on them, but I hadn't seen any resolve for it, but,
In near Blandford? Right.
Yes.
it's right into
Okay.
school, so,
Right by the roundabout.
I
Yeah.
think they did some training there one day.
oh, yeah, they did a training thing on a house over there. Maybe that's what she was talking about. But also, people are coming in and out at weird hours of the night where people don't live. So,
Right.
What else did I tell you? Lastly, I was talking to Jonathan, I thought he said, yeah. Park West, I know we had discussed, reaching out to GDOT to get a resolve. I think it's Park West where they make that, the suicide lane, and we're gonna look at doing something like a turning lane or something there. We talked about that about a month ago.
Yeah, I'll follow up with District 5 and write a letter to get that addressed.
Okay, cool. Thank y'all.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Hillman?
No, I'm pretty good. I will give a shout out to, I was glad to see a lot of notice, about the meeting today at 3. You and I had spoken about it, and so shout out to you and Jake for
Yeah, I
seeing
saw
that
it.
out there.
Well,
Although
well-
I still have people, I said, well, you have to sort of look at the Facebook page, But otherwise, it was good. I appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
And appreciate people that came out too. Got to hear from the public.
I don't have much, just appreciate, I don't know what staff was involved in helping me get a mailbox replaced that was damaged from
From the road
repaving,
work,
but
yeah.
it was done in short order and appreciate it. Whoever, I'm not sure who had a hand in it. That's
all
it.
we got. Very
Yep,
good.
Sorry.
We just got about 3 things here. Again, echo Beth, thank you guys for coming out tonight. It's a great discussion, great things to think about as we move forward. Stoplight in McCall, any updates on that?
Yes, Jonathan, the polls are up, and, they had to do some time for cure, and Jonathan might have an update on that. It's been a nightmare because of the rain, but we've managed to cobble together a few dry days here.
That's right. I think
State your name for the record.
Sorry,
sir.
what was your name?
Thank you.
Jonathan Holm, County Engineer for Effingham. Yep, to Tim's point, we have been delayed getting the poles up just due to the amount of rain that we've gotten, but praise the Lord, it stopped raining, and so they were able to get the poles up, as I'm sure you guys have seen. So waiting for concrete, testing to come back as far as the brakes and whatnot go for that, but assuming those all come back well, which they should, right now, tentatively, we're scheduled with GDOT to come July 22nd to make sure, everything's, good as far as GDOT's concerned. Assuming that, that gets approved, it shouldn't be but a few days after that. So hopefully by the end of July, we're going to be on, assuming things, everything keeps moving along like it is now. So.
Very good. So
Hey,
July
Jonathan-
22nd inspection and then go live shortly after.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
Do we know, did they have mentioned to us whether they were going to do any timing on those lights between 119 and Laurel?
I need to follow up with GDOT. I believe that they are going to try to make sure that they're synchronized together to better efficiently flow. And if not, we're going to have another crack at this once we have that turn left lane shortly, soon as well with the Courthouse Road realignment. But I'll follow up with GDOT to make sure that that's being taken care of as well.
Gotcha.
But that's just a minor adjustment once we get the lights up.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
And this is to Tim and staff and to commission. I'd like to go ahead and begin our impact fee studies as soon as we can, and looking at contracted sources for that.
Yeah, and so we will get Mark. That's one of the projects Mark's going to be working on. He actually moved up to our side of the building today, and so I think one of the first things we're just going to do. We're going to have to award the consultant on that. It's going to be a key role, and so we will start that process this week.
Perfect. And lastly, trying to set, and I know we have so many moving targets right now, but setting some priorities to our tree ordinance and conservation.
Right. And we got a copy of that, right?
Yeah, it's just a
Okay.
draft.
Yes.
Right.
That's all I have. And we have 5 minutes till planning. Roger, you gonna sing for the next 5 minutes?
Sure, can you put some Bon Jovi on?
Yeah. We'll suspend for 5 minutes and kick back up at 6 o'clock.
Sharp.
Sharp.
Sharpie.
We'll call the meeting back to order. Moving to our planning board session. Time now 6:02. Item number 1. Planning Board recommends approval of an application by Alan Rich to rezone plus or minus 4.6 acres located at 794 Floyd Avenue from AR1 to AR2 to allow for permitted uses in AR2. Map number 296, parcel number 30 and 31 in the 3rd District.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So again, the applicant is requesting to rezone the 4.6 acres to AR2. Since the applicant would like to subdivide the parcel, which is less than 5 acres, they must rezone to AR2. Right now, both parcels are currently non-conforming AR1 lots, and there are AR2 and R1 zone parcels nearby. And let me pull up that zoning map for you. There it is. So as you can see, Floyd Avenue is a county-maintained road, and the future land use map does project this parcel as agricultural residential. Staff has reviewed the application, and it is complete with the following condition: that Development Services shall review and sign the plat, and then the plat shall be recorded so the zoning can take effect.
Very good. And is everything around this area atypical? It looks kind of...
Yes, sir. So you can see, and I believe that even the parcel south of it is kind of non-conforming as well.
Gotcha.
So.
Gotcha. Very good. Mr. Rich, anything you want to add? Very good. Sorry. Being this is a public hearing, is there anyone here in opposition? If not, I'll close the public hearing. Any discussion from the board?
This is Jamie's district. Did anybody have a conversation with Jamie?
Not on this one.
Yes, I haven't. I haven't spoken to Jamie at all about it.
I don't see a problem, but.
Can I ask what you plan to do with it? Since Jamie's not here,
What was that?
I said, since Jamie's not here to ask, I'll ask.
What we're doing is we're trying,
State your name for the record.
Alan
please, sir.
Rich,
Galen Smith.
combine this acres back so we can split it up into 4 1-acre plus lots, a little over an acre lot, and we're gonna put very nice houses on it like Cameron Oaks. 2 of them will drive away off Floyd Avenue and 2 homes will drive away off Cameron Oaks Drive. So there, right now, there's 2 mobile homes on it. They'll be gone, and then we'll put 4 nice houses right there, as you know, similar to Cameron Oaks.
Thanks, sir. Any other questions?
Sounds
And
like
I do have, I did run soil reports, even though there's 2 dwellings there. If y'all need the copy of the new soil report, because I won't build a house and put it on the old septic system that those trailers are hooked to. So there are 2 wells on the property. I'll add 2 wells and 4 new septic tanks if y'all need to see the soil report.
Gotcha.
No?
That'd be for development
Okay,
services,
whatever.
yes. Very good. Any other questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion we approve alternative 1.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Item number 2, second reading, consideration to approve the second reading of an application by Alan Rich to rezone plus or minus 4.6 acres located at 794 Floyd Avenue from AR1 to AR2 to allow for permitted uses in AR2, map number 296, parcel number 30 and 31 in the 3rd District. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion we approve the second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. Item number 3 is a public hearing, consideration to approve an application by Kelsey Knight for a variance from section 5.3.3 to allow for a decrease in required building setbacks in R1, located at 335 Old Rail Road, map number 303A, parcel number 173 in the 1st District.
Kimberly Barlett, Community Planner. The applicant is requesting a variance for a decrease in the building setbacks. The property is currently located on a .52 acre lot zoned R1 in Cypress Lake subdivision. The applicant is constructing an addition to their home. The addition total under roof is 1,356 square feet. Currently, the county ordinance enforces section 5.3.3. The minimum side street setback is 25 feet. Due to the irregular shape of the parcel, the addition will require a variance of 5 feet. The variance will allow for the addition to be 20 feet from the side street property line. Staff has reviewed the application and it is complete.
Thank you, ma'am. Now open the public hearing. If there's anything from the applicant they'd like to add, please come forward.
Hey, y'all. My name's Kelsey Knight. I'm the owner at 335 Old Railroad. I've lived there since 2017. We love our neighborhood, love our neighbors, love our house, but we have outgrown it. So we're just requesting the small variance of 5 feet just to help make our plans look like our builder is saying would be the most aesthetically pleasing for our neighborhood. I love my neighbors, and I've spoken to all of them about it, and they have all signed a letter of support, which I have with me tonight. I have multiple copies if you guys would like to look at that, and a copy of the plans if you want something bigger to look at. The HOA supports the addition as long as y'all approve it. But yes, we're just looking to remain in the same house, the same neighborhood with my kids. I live next door to my sister and my brother-in-law, so we don't want to move.
Understood. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
If there's anyone here in opposition, please come forward. Being there are none, I'll close the public hearing and entertain motions and questions.
Make a motion, we approve the variance application.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unopposed, motion carries. Item number 4, second reading, consideration to approve the second reading of an application by Kelsey Knight for variance from section 5.3.3 to allow for a decrease in required building setbacks in R1 located at 335 Old Rail Road, map number 303A, parcel number 173 in the 1st District. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we approve the second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unopposed, motion carries. I understand there is a need for executive session, so I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Make a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel, property, and pending litigation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.